Okay. Madam Mayor, it is 6:08, you're live. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and welcome to the City of Lake Orange Beach City Commission Budget Workshop Session 1. It is Monday, July 10th, and it's 6 o'clock, and
Mayor Betty Rush.
Here.
Vice Mayor Christopher McVoy.
Here.
Commissioner Sarah Maliga.
Stokes is not here. Yes, sorry.
Commissioner Stokes is absent. Commissioner Diaz.
Here.
I was writing and talking. Thank you very much.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, tonight, as far as I'm concerned, my opinion of tonight is that it's an informative session. So we are.
All right.
Of the city's financial year 2024 operating. and capital plan. The workshop, there's no public comment and no vote.
I think your mic is on.
I don't think you're. Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Let me start over. Good evening, everyone. And tonight is the first meeting it's the first budget hearing, and essentially it's a workshop. There's no public comment. It's an educational experience for all of us, and it's essentially run by staff to educate us for the fiscal year 2024 operating and capital budgets. Thank you. Mr. McVoy, I see your light is on. I think we're going to, I think we're going to go staff first, then they can ask any questions when they're done.
okay, but I think I would like to, since it's an overview, I'd like us to start with the big picture.
Well, the staff is prepared to present a presentation. Let's let them go. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Ms. Diaz?
I'm sorry, Vice Mayor.
Ms. Davis, you're Davis.
Yes.
He's Diaz, you're Davis. Thank you.
I just want to first open up
Right, yeah, I was expecting that.
process.
Yep.
And just want to first say, oh my gosh, I just looked outside.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
I'm sorry to distract, but I just want to say, yes, the staff has presented the first round of our proposed fiscal year 2024 budget. And as you mentioned, this is an overview presentation of the budget. This budget is comprised of meeting with the department heads. Of course, the department heads met with their staff to ensure that the services that they're responsible for providing for the city is met in their budget, along to ensuring that those items are aligned with the priorities and direction of the commission. And so with that, we've met with each department head as well with along with our finance team, our director Yannick and assistant director Monica, in shaping the budget based on those conversations and basic discussions with our different department heads to form the budget that you have today. Of course, this is our first round, as you mentioned. And of course, we will give you what's today is the snapshot view based on the results of receiving the results or requests from the different departments. And then from here, we will, of course, continue to massage the budget to make sure that it is balanced as it's required to be.
Right.
And so this is just one of many conversations. And so I do want to thank all the department heads for their hard work in bringing forth their responsible budgets. Of course, we will have much conversations on those budgets. And also I want to thank our assistant director and director for their due diligence in making sure they're presenting a product that is bringing forth a responsible budget for the city.
Thank you.
And one of the things I do want to highlight, and I don't want to take Yannick's thunder, but I want to say you will see that we're trying to take a different approach in this budget year. As we have not done before, we're utilizing OpenGov to begin shaping our budget product for you. This is our first stab at that. So we may capture some glitches as we learn OpenGov, but our goal is to make a more efficient and more transparent budget process so that at some point, if it's not at the end of this budget year and this budget process, it'll certainly be much refined in our next budget year. So we're trying to take our budget process to another level of transparency and efficiency.
And OpenGov, is that a website? A little bit, what is that?
It's a budget application,
Mhm.
and I will let our most knowledgeable finance director share the details on that. And I'm sure they're going to expound on it as you will see through the presentation.
So who's up next?
Mr. Yannick.
Mr. Yannick. Good morning.
Good evening.
Good afternoon.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Commissioners. My name is Yannick Indahayo, for the record, Finance Director. I'm with Monica McNaughton, Assistant Finance Director. Again, welcome to the first budget workshop for fiscal year 2024. Carmen pretty much covered the introduction. What I would like to add to it is the dates that we have. With this being the first workshop, the next workshop is July 24th. Another one, the third one, August 7th, and the fourth one, August 22nd. And we'll also have 2 public hearings as required by Florida statute. We'll have the first hearing September 14th and the final hearing September 28th.
September what?
September 28th. Right. So what we have projected on the screen is what this is the work that we did for the first time with OpenGov. And again, we had some glitches. You would have received this a lot more sooner. But we had some glitches, and so here we are. We finally got the product ready for you. It's a summary of the overall budget for fiscal year 24. So if you go to the next page for the revenue assumptions. So given the property values were provided by the property appraiser, and our values did increase. So the overall increase of tax revenue was projected at 14%. Our franchise fee, for the most part, remained at 8%. And we also had indirect chargebacks, which is.
Sorry to interrupt, but is what you're showing there the same as what we have in front of us?
Yes,
I believe it is on.
yes.
We don't have those papers.
Yeah, we don't happen to have that
You
page.
don't have an introduction?
No,
Yes.
we can read it up there.
And the pretty.
It goes, and then it goes to charts. Okay, revenue assumptions.
Changed it? Okay. What about this? I have the.
Is it
Yes.
just one
So-
page?
It's just one page.
Maybe somebody could run and just make some copies and bring it so we have it for our booklets. That would be helpful.
Oh, I think
Could,
it's just,
yeah, Lauren's gonna help you out.
it's just this one page.
Uh,
Still,
Yeah,
it's just this. I have this, well, I'm gonna need it. I can read off.
because it's up on the screen. Yeah,
It's just this one page.
thank you. There was just, we have a complete.
And Monica, could you enlarge that on the screen?
You know,
though? There you
Oh,
go.
thank-
Yes, thank you.
Yay.
So go ahead. So for the revenue assumptions, if I may repeat myself, was so our property values within the city did increase. And as a result, our tax revenue ad valorem increased by approximately 14%. Franchise fees remain relatively the same for as last year's was still at 8%. We had indirect chargebacks, which was administrative fees by each department, depending on the department's percentage of their expenditures plus capital budgets. For the expenses, we had an overall increase of salaries across the board for 3%. We did not add any new position in this budget, but I believe we have in your book, in your binder that you have, we have enhancements that were requested, supplemental requests that had new position requested there. The defined benefit costs per actual report increased by approximately 3%. The general liability this year really hit us hard. It's 35%.
Wow.
Yes, so that that was a. big
That's something we
difference.
can all relate to.
Mhm. And last but not least, the largest expense for the general fund is the police contract, which is approximately 14 million. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
So our next slide is we're gonna cover the governmental funds. This is
Yep.
the results that we have as of today. We're still, as I go through these, you'll notice some budgets have deficits. Well, we're still in discussion with the departments to see where we could where we can make some cuts in order to have this balanced for the next commission meeting. So the general fund revenues are projected at 45 million, expenses at 45.5, which puts us in a deficit of about $500,000. This was mainly due to we also have a deficit in electric fund, which we will cover as we let on. Despite of all that, we were still able to make some cuts. And I think as of today, we are at a negative 150 or negative 200. So we still continue to work with the departments to make sure we get this down to zero.
I guess, I know that it was asked that I,
No, we're gonna wait till the
no,
end.
I,
Mr.
Madam
McBoy,
Mayor,
Mr.
I
McBoy,
want to, this
we are
is an
gonna wait till
overview of
the
the
end.
budget. I would like to
write down your
understand
questions
clearly
and
at the beginning,
Mr.
where
McBoy,
are we as
I'm
far as
running this
that
meeting.
budget?
you
No,
can
I'm
ask
sorry.
questions later.
I'm sorry.
I am running this meeting. You can ask questions later. Let him at least have an uninterrupted way to present his evidence. If you've got something, make a note and ask him when he's done, where there will be time for questions. Thank you. Yannick?
Yes. Then we have the building fund, which is revenues at 3.5 and expenses at 3.3. They're pretty much in balance, but the majority of the building funds revenues is mainly we're required by Florida statute to have our fund balance to a certain level. Right now, our fund balance is pretty high, but we will go through that in details as we go down the slides. The beach fund, 4.8 in revenues, 4.8 and pretty much it's almost breaking even. We're able to talk to Lauren Bennett, and that number will be reconciled. We were able to reconcile that negative 13,000. Code remediation is pretty much in balance, and for 200,000 approximately revenues and expenses. A Gulf fund 1.6 in revenues and 1.6 in expenses. We're in balance. The IT internal service funds, we're pretty much breaking even there. As you can see, we have 2.8 in revenues and also 2.8 million in expenses. The garage funds, pretty much the same thing also, 1.2 million versus 1.2 million. We are in balance there. Then we have the self-insurance fund, which the revenues is 4.5 million and the expenses are only 4 million. However, we did get an update on the estimates. So that number will, the expense portion will go up to approximately 4.5 million. So but we will still be in balance despite the increase. Then we go to the employee benefit funds, revenues of 5.5 million or 5.6 versus expenses of 5.2 million. So we are in the positive there. And the debt service, I'm not sure why, I don't know why it's zero, but the debt service is usually, it's a wash. So we have a balance of about 0.092. The money that comes in is what we use to pay back the road bonds that we had back in 2017 and 2018. We go to next. So at so here we have the pie charts for total revenues and total expenses for all governmental funds, which is 71.6 million in revenues and versus 70.1 million in expenses. Obviously, this shows a net income mainly due to the employee benefit funds, which is close to $500,000. Okay. Now we can move on to the enterprise funds. And the enterprise funds, we have the electric, which had revenues of approximately 66 million and expenses of 69.6 million or 70 million. We show a deficit of 3.5 million, which we will be going over in detail as we go through each individual funds.
Yep.
And you have the water fund, revenues at 17.5 million and expenses at 16.9 million. We have a net income of approximately over $500,000. Local sewer fund is almost breaking even with revenues of 10.5 million and expenses of 10.5 million. Regional sewer, we have 13.5 million in revenues and expenses of 13.6 million. And the reason that deficit will be covered by their fund balance as they collect funds from different cities, their partners. Those funds will be used for future projects. And stormwater, we have revenues of approximately 2 million and almost breaks even with the expenses of 2 million also. They are in balance. And the refuse fund, which is approximately 6.7 million in revenues and expenses of 6.8, short deficit of approximately 100,000. We are looking to increase the rates for the solid waste, which have not been done in so many years, but we will get into those details. And I believe Jamie will speak on that. Would like to speak on that a little bit. So the next slide. So this is so go back real quick. Go back. You mind going back one more slide? The pie charts. Go back to the pie charts for the enterprise funds. Yeah. So overall for the enterprise funds, we have total revenues of 116 million. This is 119 million in expenses. And this is, as you can see, this is mainly because right now we have a deficit in electric fund of approximately 3.5 million. Okay. So now for the next slides, we're just going to go over some of the charts to look at revenues and expenses over time for each of the funds that we just covered. I'm not sure if maybe we could ask the questions as we go through the funds.
Whatever you're most comfortable with.
I think we should address the questions after.
Okay, I mean,
After each
this
fund,
is your
that way
show.
We cover the funds.
Yep.
And then
I'm just trying to show courtesy to you to
Okay.
be able to have some sort of,
perfect.
so I see Mr. McVoy's light is on.
Right.
So since it's an overview, what I'm looking for is where are we at this point in time? And I think what I'm understanding is at this point, what we have is we're in the negative on the overall budget. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that total amount that we're in the negative is, I thank you, Madam Clerk, I'll use the mic. That my understanding is that we're in the negative and the amount is approximately how many million?
3.5.
Is that the overall?
Overall, all the funds combined.
And what I'm seeing in the general fund is we're approximately even. There's a little bit of an issue of about $500,000 in the general fund,
Right.
which apparently relates to another one. But overall, we're about even there. In the enterprise funds, pretty much all of them are about even, except the electric fund, which is about 3.6 negative.
Correct.
So the overall problem with the budget is directly related to the electric fund.
So as of
Plus or minus
today,
a couple 100,000 maybe.
yes,
here
but
now.
we're still working with the electric department just to see where we can have some cuts, and there's still they have to go back and work on their projections and see how we can get this.
And is just so that I think it's important that we as a community understand where we are
Mhm.
at this point. I understand that the budget process will go on for some time and that we will
Yes.
be making adjustments. But the negative that we're in on the overall budget has a very focused source in the electric fund, if I'm understanding. Is that because we are projecting to have higher expenses, or is that because we're operating at a loss at this point up till now?
As of for fiscal year 23, I don't think we're gonna be operating at a loss for fiscal year 23. And because we had that increase in the rates, however, with that major reduction in rates for fiscal 24, currently, as we look at the budget as of today, we are projecting a deficit.
And this relates to the PCA rates or to the base
believe
rates
so.
or
So
to
if you-
everything?
If you look into your detail, electric
they're gonna
budget,
through every
you'll see a significant decrease in the PCA revenues. And the decrease in the revenues were not proportionate to a decrease in the expenses. Because PCA being a wash through, technically, if it decreases, revenue is supposed to decrease, and so are the expenses with the same amount. So they
So-
shouldn't have an impact at the end of the day. But in this was not the case this year, and I believe we also had some increases in some of the costs in the electric fund. So that's where.
And so I'm understanding that this somehow relates largely, our overall budget issue relates largely to the electric, or almost exclusively to electric. Then within that, it relates to the PCA part of it. The PCA is something that we have had multiple electric utility meetings over the last number of months. The PCA is what we have changed what we charge customers. We've gone up and down, pretty significant up at one point. If we raised the PCA rates, I believe we went from roughly $100 a month for an average customer. We went up to about 120. If we raised the rates, why are we in the hole? Why are we negative?
Well, I think when we go into the specific departments, those
I'm-
will be deeper.
I'm actually looking for an answer from the city manager or finance or electric on that.
Well, I know that we've all had a chance to discuss this privately with the city manager.
I'm not interested in private
I'm not
discussions.
discussing
I want,
this with Mr.
I have been,
So-
if I may continue speaking, we have all had to vote and tell our community, we are raising your rates because we need to. I am now seeing a budget that is in the hole. I'm told that it's because of PCA rates. We raised them. So there should have been more income coming in. We've talked about PCA rates any number of times at meetings. We were assured that we had some spare, that we could start a PCA stabilization fund. And now at the 11th hour, I'm finding out that our budget is in the hole. I
Madam
would
Mayor?
like to make sure that our fellow commissioners and the public understands how that came about.
And I'm sure we'll get that answer.
Right. Well, I'm sure we'll get more detailed in the electric fund, but in general, remember the PCA is a pass-through rate. So we only purchase power that is needed for the customer. So there is no overage that we retain. However, as you know, when the rates increase, we had the rates high for a while based on the high gas rates or natural gas rates. And so we had that high for a while. Once the gas prices reduced, we still had it at the high rate, which created the fund balance in PCA.
Okay,
So the
but
commission decided to retain those funds to create a stabilization fund. So I assume if we made a different decision, that would have covered the deficit that we may be seeing now. But nonetheless, there are some changes in this budget that created the deficit beyond.
okay, let
that.
me cut through that a little bit. And we've all seen the cumulative graphs that I worked up a while back from the electric funds numbers, where the revenues started, they were on a higher slope,
Mhm.
increasing from the expenses. So the
Right.
statement pass through is not strictly true. It's supposed to be, but it's not. The revenues have been higher than the expenses for some time. That would leave a surplus. So we would be listening to a budget where there was extra money, and instead we're listening to a budget where we are in the hole.
Yes, we are.
That, right. And you
So-
don't get in the hole when you charge your customers more. Or if you do, there's something else going on that's not clear and not correct.
And I'm sure
Now,
we're going to get.
what I want to make sure we're clear, we're keep in mind, we're talking about the fiscal year 24 proposed budget.
That's why I asked the question,
Right.
where are we now? And the answer that I was given of where we are now is we're in the hole on that one also.
Okay, Mr. Diaz.
Yeah, I don't necessarily want to get ahead of ourselves, but I did have some of the same concerns, and it's mostly, so this is not so much a question, but maybe more of a comment / suggestion that when we do get to this level of detail, I think one thing that's really critical is, when we do talk about PCA, it is largely a pass-through, AKA we're passing that expense to our customers. So I think when we go through this detail, we need to be really clear about how much of that is going to happen potentially, or, what's needed. Like, we just want to present this information in a way so that when our utility customers are listening in, they're gonna, understand what's the situation is in.
No question. We need to, understand what happened. Commissioner Malega.
My question is for the finance director, Yannick. Didn't we also just have a whole conversation about some staff that wasn't added into the budget that we've now had to resolve that will now be added into 2024's budget for each department?
Yes.
How many staff members and what was that number that impacted this electric fund from that mess that we cleaned up 2 weeks ago?
I don't have the numbers in front.
Because we have to be mindful that we cleaned up a mess. There was, so if it was 4 employees that we did not attest for last year, that is now going to come into play this year for 2024.
I believe the impact for the with that budget amendment, I believe it was approximately 1.6.
So half of our deficit.
Was it 1.6?
The number that I remember.
Okay,
is
so half of
1.6.
the deficit, that was for the electric fund.
That's what they like.
So half of the deficit of
Right.
3.5 is 1.6. That's bodies
Correct.
now that we are going to be employing that we did not employ in 2023. So if we're going to speak rhetoric and numbers, let's make sure we're putting all the facts out there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Keep moving along.
Okay.
Carmen,
So. Well,
Mr. Liberty?
good evening. For the record, Ed Liberty, Electric Utility Director. I just want to correct some things to make sure that they're in the right context. Year to date, we are not in the hole in fiscal 23. We are not in, that's my understanding, correct, Yannick?
we're not in all.
Year to date, we are in the positive. We are operating fine. What we're talking about is a shortfall as we look ahead to fiscal 23, fiscal 24 budget. The current draft of the budget just has us in a negative by about 3.5, 3.6 million, meaning that expenses are higher than revenues by that amount. What we have done in the budget is we've been very careful this year to make sure that PCA revenues equal PCA expenses on a budget basis, because it's a pass-through. If that makes sense, right? But we are, for fiscal 23, okay. We are not losing money in fiscal 23 at all. In projecting ahead, when we look at our projected revenues for fiscal 24 and our projected expenses for fiscal 24, while holding PCA revenue equal to PCA expense, we're showing a $3.6 million deficit. In order to address that, we're going back and looking very closely at a number of things. One is our assumption for revenues. So we have to forecast revenues separate from PCA revenues. So we call those base revenues. So we're going through a detailed analysis of PCA revenues, setting that aside as a pass-through, roughly $17.2 million or so. Rough numbers, don't hold me to that exact number. So the PCA revenue equals PCA expense. Then we look at base revenues from each one of our customer classes and determine what we think a good number for fiscal 24 will be. We arrive at that using year-to-date fiscal 23, where we are, recognizing that we still have 3 more months to go through this year, and then trying to crystal ball, what do we think our customers will do next year when most of our load is weather driven? We know that on a year-to-date basis, we're about 3.66% higher in energy delivery to our customers than the same time last year. We can't assume, though, that next year we will grow another 3.66%. may not happen. We've actually had 2 years in our history where revenues, or rather electric deliveries to our customers, decreased. Most recently in 2021 and in 2017, electric deliveries in those years were lower than the prior year. So we're trying to be very careful and pick a good revenue forecast. What I don't want to do is fix the budget and say, I'll just raise the revenue forecast and hope it works out, right? We want to have a pretty good estimate and be somewhat conservative. Same thing on the expenses. Most of our expenses we can model, for example, around labor, headcount, things that we're going to spend money on, but recognizing that next year's base budget increase is only 3.1%. That is below the inflation rate.
Yeah.
And we're trying to hold the line on expenses, but as city manager said, we're going to be going through these in much more detail to try to close that gap. I don't want to make it look easy just by giving you a very high revenue forecast. That might be unrealistic. We want to really work on both. So this is the first pass and we're working through the details. But I just wanted you, because I know you're concerned that year to date we may be in the negative. That's not the case.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Diaz.
I just wanted to add to that also, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Ed, but payroll is a small fraction of it. The other big problem that we have to tackle when we go into detail is the change in classification of some of the commercial accounts, and that's a pretty major discrepancy as well. So, payroll issues from the mistakes of a previous director, I think we're definitely better suited right now. Thank you, Yannick, to cover it, but there's a lot here, so I don't want to take over the presentation. I think we should keep going and look forward to having the electric.
But you're correct on the commercial demand. So if you recall what we did when we rolled out new rates in January of 2021 or 2022, I believe it was, we tightened the rules around demand. And we had a migration of customers from the commercial category to commercial demand. Approximately 180 plus customers that had been commercial customers became commercial demand customers. The largest part of that migration, I believe, has already happened, but customers will continue to trip over the demand threshold and go into the commercial demand category. Since we're not creating new commercial customers at a very high rate, what you're seeing is a migration of customers from one rate category to the other rate category. You can't budget the same customer in both categories. They're either going to be in one or the other. We do know that overall, our revenues, net revenues, what we call base revenues, increased in the $1 to $2 million range because of that change in application, if you will, of the demand language. So that was a positive effect. So we were able to increase revenues there without having to have large increases in other groups, even though some others went up as well. But that's hard to forecast how many customers move over, and more customers move over, I believe, almost every month. But I don't think they'll increase at the rate that they did in the past.
Thank you.
In terms of numbers.
Okay. Moving right along.
Thank you. We go to next page. So these are the graphs that gives you the revenues and expenses over time. As you can see the graphs, you can see the graphs here. You can see it's pretty much consistent with the previous years. What I would like to point out is you can see the increase in taxes, which is mostly ad valorem, from 4.2 to 16.3 million. Every other revenues here are pretty much consistent from year to year. We did the transfer from enterprise funds. There was a reduction of approximately 700,000 or 800,000. That's because we did decrease on the administrative charges and the franchise fees that were reduced from the electric fund. On the expenses, you could also see on the expense side that it's pretty much the majority of our expenses are, with the exception of wages and benefits, the police and fire benefits, and the operating expenses that we have increased by approximately 2 million, from 25 million to 25.7 million to 27 million, of which the 27 million, 14 million is the contract that we have with PBSO. Any questions with the graphs?
Just so I understand clearly, when we're looking at the curves that dip down quite a bit, FY 2023 actual as of May 2023,
Yes.
is that dip down simply that's not a full year?
Correct.
It's not projected out?
No, it's not projected out.
Okay.
And you can see it goes right back up as you have the 23 budgets and then the slight increase in 24 budget.
Yannick, is this May 1 or May 31?
831,
Thank you.
yes. So 8 months. Within the budget.
It might be interesting or helpful to add a column or a point and maybe put it with an open circle rather than a closed or something that's FY 2023 projected based on what we know so far, so that now all the numbers are comparable.
Okay,
Yeah. Projected from what we're doing actual is what I'm talking about. Because right now you have a weird dip in the curve, and that's simply because it's not the full year. So if
Correct.
you made an estimate of what that would do if you normalized it by 12 months over instead of 8, it would give us an idea of how that number is projected. And
would you still need to see the actual?
Yeah, maybe.
the actual on this graph doesn't help me
Doesn't
very
help,
much because I can't compare. If I was comparing 8 months for the other years, then it might be a 1-to-1 comparison.
So you would like to have like a projection based on the actual
Right.
instead of the
Exactly.
actual, okay?
Yeah.
And have maybe at the bottom what the actuals are,
Sure.
that
Something like
way
that.
we know
Yeah.
the projection.
And I don't know, if this is something where we're breaking OpenGov or breaking 3 employees working on it around the clock, it's probably not worth it. But if it was relatively easy to do that projection simply
Okay.
by scaling it,
Note this
that'd
down.
be helpful.
Next slide. So this takes us to the pie charts for the general fund. As you can see, the majority of the revenues being the ad valorem taxes and also the transfers from enterprise funds.
And those
And-
transfers are the pilot,
Yes,
the
the
8% plan.
8% and the admin fees as well.
And can you just as a reminder, I'm most familiar with it with the electric fund, that if you get your electric in a municipality from a commercial investor-owned utility, they pay a franchise fee.
Correct.
And can you give us an idea of ballpark of that percentage so that we have an idea whether we're doing about the same or?
I don't think we're talking about
Yes.
this.
We're not, I mean, different,
From the cities that have audited in the past, that 8% is a little bit too high.
Yeah. The number
I don't know-
sticks
I
in
don't
my
know the
head is
exact
six, but
percentage, but for a city this size, usually franchise fees like close to like 4 million, maximum 3 million. Again, that's just from my audit days. I can't really confirm with that, but
it's the same concept exists whether they're investor-owned utilities or whether they're municipal-owned.
I believe so. This
We
is the
might
same
have
concept.
ours slightly higher because we are helping ourselves as a community.
Correct.
So it's not unreasonable that it might be a little high.
No, it's not. And it decreased this year because as we were trying to get different funds to balance. On some of them, we saw that, hey, well, maybe let's see if we could decrease the franchise fee to like 7.25, just to see if we could help out balance the budget. And the same thing with administrative costs. We had to do some reallocation from the previous years, just to see if we could help some of those funds that were struggling to have their budget balanced.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Then we have the table that shows the revenues, and which is representative of the pie charts also. So I think there's really nothing to point out here. We'll go to the next slide. Yeah, expenses. So here we have the expenses. And in the expenses, you have the majority being the police. And we have other, can you go into the other departments? And what consists of the other is really, so we also collect the ad valorem portion of the CRA, which is approximately 3.5. It's just a pass through. It
Right,
comes to
we
us.
collect it.
Exactly. So that's why you see other being such a big number compared to the other expenses.
So if I'm looking at the revenues on the previous pie chart, taxes where it was about half, does that include that CRA?
Yes, it includes that. That's part of it.
So actually, the part that comes to the city has to get shaved down a bit from.
Right. So it would be approximately, let me see. On that. Are you able to- So there's the non-department, go to the, is it the other?
Do you happen to remember ballpark? Is the
about-
CRA portion? You said it was
It's
about 3 million?
3.5. It was.
And roughly eyeballing this, roughly half of
Right.
45 is maybe 22. So about 19 million is what comes in.
In the city, right, for the
Into
city.
the city.
3.5, we collect, we collect and then we send the money over to
And
CRA.
then if you were to add in terms of expenses, which are
Right,
here
so-
somewhere,
Go back.
if you
to the-
added the police and the fire, roughly our taxes pay for the police and fire.
Pretty much. Yes. So if you go to
Everything
the
else
table,
is-
go to the table, yes. So if you go to the table below.
Yeah.
This is where you can see that the total for the police itself is 18 million. And, and then you have the fire benefits also, which is 3 million, approximately 21 million is just money. That's something that we always
did-
gonna have that.
But for
expense.
those listening, that's not just PBSO, that's also our existing old
Pension.
police officers'
Yes,
pensions.
pension.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
I want
the
people to
pension,
hear,
you
to
see-
know that.
Yeah, it's 3.9 for the pension and 14 million for the contract. And also the fire has approximately 3.6 in benefits also for their pension.
Is comparing 20, oh, these are all 2024, okay.
This is all 24, right?
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions before we move to? The next slide is usually just the revenue by fund, just for all. But this is very, I'll go over this really quick. This is basically the revenues for each fund. For the other governmental funds, which we covered with the numbers in my previous in the previous pages. So we have IT, employee benefit, the beach fund, self-insurance and building permits, and it's all detailed in the table below. Just scroll down. But we're going to be covering these funds individually, so as we go along.
It's almost 7:00 already.
I mean, it's up to you. We can go through them individually or because I kind of covered these in the previous pages.
Mhm.
So it's up to you whether you would like to go through them individually or because it's pretty much the same thing as
It's
the
what you
only thing
just
you're gonna see,
said.
you're just gonna see the graphs. You'll have the graphs over time and expenses, yes.
These are just
So
pie
what
charts.
is, on this one, for instance, what is operating expenses as opposed to wages and benefits? And are benefits really larger than wages?
Well, it depends. Well, if you look at the employee benefits, so employee benefit fund, that's the fund
Mhm.
that pays out the claims, pays out to the health insurance. So that one does not really have any operating expense. The operating expense is pretty much slim. They just have a benefit expense. So if you'd like, if you like, I'll go through, I can go through each one of them. It's up to you. I'll let the commission decide whether you want to go through them individually or.
It's,
I
right, what
mean,
else is there to
there's
explain?
A wage is a wage, a benefit's a benefit, and
Yeah.
operating expenses, all the overhead.
Benefits are often more expensive than the actual wages because you've got all the other funds.
I thought that benefits,
Benefits, usually wages are larger, but this pie chart includes the employee benefit fund.
Mhm.
It's on just the only expense that fund has is just benefits.
Right.
So
um,
we can, so we can quickly go through, it'll be fast.
Okay.
Let's go to the next page. These are the expenses, yes, we can move forward. So now we have the revenues for the enterprise funds, with the electric being the largest, water, regional sewer and local sewer. And then we have refuse and stormwater. A total of 116 million, 116.5 million. Let's go down.
Stormwater is
It's a small one.
is under other or is
2
that
million,
part of?
it's on the- it's on
Water
the other.
utility.
Yes,
What's that?
it's on the other.
Okay.
Yep. Just go down. You'll see that stormwater is only 2 million compared to the other ones. The next page.
Mhm.
And you have the expense category, operating. Keep going down. Now, so if you go to the table, you'll see we have total salaries of 15 million, benefits of 7 million, 7.6 million, and the operating expense being 96 million. With a total of 119 million or 120 million approximately. For the next page. Yep. So this is the building permit funds. We're pretty much, the other sources are really like charges for services. But it also includes the it's mainly the use of fund balance for the revenues and for the expenses. You have building permits expenditures and also other non-departmental, which mainly consist of transfers to the administrative charges to the general fund. Go to the next page. And as you can see in this graph, you have your permits and fees, which you see that big jump in the use of fund balance. And again, going back to the Florida statute, which requires
Right.
their fund balance to be at a certain level. Right now, we are way above
Right.
the requirement. So
Good.
even last year, we had projected to use 950, almost $1 million in the fund balance. But for whatever reasons, they made so much money. So we didn't even get to tap in the fund balance. So this year.
I see Bill has left, William has left the room. I don't know what that's about.
Yeah. So we're trying, part of his budget, it's going to the capital project contribution for the 1900 customer service building.
Right.
For the lobby. And also, I believe he'll use some of that money also towards his ERP system. But again, hopefully this in 24, they'll be able to tap it into their fund balance.
Are there restrictions? I remember this discussion before that it was, I forget whether 4 million
It was
was,
4 million, right? It was 4 million and some change, and it was way above.
and it was way above what it
yeah,
was supposed to be. So we were supposed to spend it down. Are there restrictions on what you can spend it on?
Only for building related activities,
Capital.
building permits.
Can they use it for employees?
No.
You could use it for employees within the building permits, yes, but you want to be careful with that because unless it's temporary employees only, because you don't want to be stuck with that employee, and then you're gonna have issues with the budget going forward.
Right.
So I'm pretty confident that in 24 we'll tap into the fund balance unless we have a lot of construction going on in the city. Okay. So next, so this is the wages and benefits, as you can see, and you have the operating expenditure. Part of that operating expenditures that transfer to capital project for that building. Okay, go to the next fund. The next fund is the beach fund. So for the let's see from there. So these are the pie charts with the revenues and expenses. It's that they're their budget they're breaking even with the revenues and expenses. The majority of the revenues coming from parking and rents. And the departments with the largest expenses obviously being the beach, and the beach parking. And they also have some non-departmental there because they have a debt service with the 2020 non-ad valorem bond that was issued back in fiscal year 20. So can we move to the next recharge?
And on that one, on the revenues,
Yes.
where would revenues from doing weddings fit in that pie chart?
Rents and royal.
That would be the rents,
Yeah.
the rentals.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Is that the rent, from Mamma Mia and the various
No,
restaurants?
that would be leased properties.
Or would it be the lease properties or is it other? I'm just trying to get an idea of how big that revenue stream is compared to other things.
Which one? The rents?
The rents from weddings.
Lauren.
Come on up, Ms. Bennett.
I didn't bring the books, so I'm asking a question.
Pop quiz.
Yeah, ballpark.
Background. Good evening, Lauren Bennett, Director of Leadership Service. It's about 100 to 120,000 annually for the ballroom.
Okay, so it's small compared to the 4 million ballpark. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, and this is the revenues and expenses over time, and you can see there was just a big spike in the fiscal year 2020 actual. That was because of that bond proceeds where they received $6 million when we issued a bond back in 2020. Other than that, you can see that we're pretty much consistent from year to year.
How much was that bond?
So it was two parts. There's one for one part was 16 million, and the other part was approximately 10 million.
And what were they for?
So 16 million was a reimbursement of previous projects that we had spent money because we spent the money using our current revenues from the previous years, which was approximately 16 million.
And the other,
And the other was new projects for different funds.
all of the beach stuff?
No, not all.
Oh.
No, the beach had like $6 million
Yeah.
from the 16 million. And then they also had new projects, which was the portion of the 10 million.
We're still giving a phantom $6 million that we would pay.
Because remember, I don't know if you recall, in
Yeah.
the past, the beach fund always operated with a negative
Right.
fund balance of like 3 million and some change. So when we issued that bond, they helped the fund balance. Now they're in the 3
Paying
million
it back.
plus. Mhm.
We're paying it back. like
Yes.
$2 million.
But we didn't use if we were consistently in that one, 3 million negative, that's a difference between income and expenses, right? And we didn't use the bond to diminish that difference. Can't do that. You can only use the bond for capital type things.
Well, the first portion of the bond, the 16 million, was a reimbursement for all the previous capital projects, and the 6 million being for the beach. So that's how it was. That's how it was. The bond was structured. So when we received, when we issued that bond, the 6 million went into the beach fund. No, not the road fund, the non-ad valorem bond. Yes.
I'm just trying to understand.
We
Yes,
lent
the
ourselves the
project-
money and they were paying. back.
Exactly. So we're
Right.
like paying ourselves back for all the projects that put us in debt. And also usually for capital project, they always it's always recommended to issue a bond for when you have capital projects. So in the previous years, we just used to use our PAYGO money. So what we did, we just issued a bond to reimburse ourselves and also fund future projects as well. So let's go to the expenses for the beach fund. So you have your salaries in blue and the benefits in orange. And you also have your operating expenses, and over time, you can see that they increased slightly. Any questions with that? Each one?
I do have a question on this one. if we have a storm, it's going to greatly affect this beach fund, correct?
Yes.
So would it be wise or smart for us to think, maybe not for 2024, but start figuring out how we can set up a small emergency beach fund for when that day does come? Because you just said this fund basically right now is just breaking even.
Yes.
So if we have a storm that comes through and we have money that we have to outlay, I just don't want to see us finding ourselves in 3 to 5 million in the hole again at the beach fund because we had a bigger storm than we anticipated, or storms back to back, which have happened in Florida.
Mhm.
So is there any way that we as a city can start projecting forward to say, what can we do now to try to build that, kind of like we're doing with the cemetery, creating a sinking fund over here?
Right.
Even if it's just a small portion every year that we just attribute to an emergency storm fund for the beach. Or beach restoration fund or whatever we could call it. I don't know what the legal jargon is for.
We could. We could if we had some room.
Yeah, really, we had some money.
Yeah, the question would be, where would that monies, what is the revenue stream that would fund that? And
So
right
right
now,
now
our
what we
revenue.
have-
Hopefully in the pool.
Yeah. So right now what we have is basically what they have is just their fund balance. So
Right.
we try, well, as we go through these budgets, we try to not touch the fund balance in case of an emergency, we could tap into that fund balance, knowing that 75% of anything hurricane related costs is reimbursable, or 90% of it, whichever that number is.
Right. Mr. Diaz.
Don't say the H word anymore. I know, but Yannick just said it. Yeah, I mean, I'm concerned about the beach fund because it is razor thin and it really just highlights the need to increase revenue. And let's just say I'm excited to get into detail of this because I certainly have some ideas on that. And the use of our upstairs space, because as Vice Mayor McVoy's question points out, right now as a wedding venue, it's not a lot. And I think we vastly underutilize that space. And if we made it available to a vendor or somebody who wants to rent out both sides and take over that work, I think, something that's open 7 days a week and then do weddings, I think it would be far more beneficial to us and definitely better on Lauren and her staff to have one less thing to worry about.
I'm so glad you said that, because one of the, I have my commissioner comments are gonna be fairly heavy this week, whenever we have our next meeting. And that's on my list. We've got to get the RFP out. We've got to get that out to find out what's going on up there.
Yeah.
Whether it's tied to the pool or not, let's just do something.
Yeah, because this is a stormy year and I'm actually pretty, well, not just that, but just in general, rain and not great weather. The data is really interesting this year, and I'm not comfortable with these razor thin margins. So I think there's a lot we can do as we work on the pool and get that online. I think there's things we can do before then too, though.
And that's coming up like
Yeah.
August 1st. We're gonna bring the pool back. Madam-
Yes, so either the 1st or the 15th. But yes, I'm prepared for that.
I bring this up because I was just in Fort Myers this past weekend and the devastation that I walked around there and I was
Yeah.
saying, if this was Lake Worth Beach, where would we be?
Right.
Financially, physically, mentally, emotionally as a city, the devastation there is just, it's horrifying to stand on the beach. And I'm thankful that we always have a shield of protection around our little town. But it made me start thinking of these things like going down the road, what do we do?
Right. So that will conclude the beach fund. The next fund is the code remediation fund. This is a small fund. Haven't had much activity, but we're always projecting 200,000 in revenues and expenses.
And that's fines, administrative fees.
Correct.
Not permit applications. Here comes Mr. Waters rushing up.
I'm just shocked by how small this number is compared to all the pink notices on the wall. And to compare to how many complaints we get about
I know
how
about
bad our
code
code
enforcement.
enforcement is and how hard we are on people. I'm like, 200,000, that doesn't even sound like we're doing our job.
Good evening, William Waters, Community Sustainability Director. The Code Remediation Fund relates to our nuisance abatement remedial services, board ups, lot clearings, and demolitions, as well as foreclosures. It includes the sale of surplus properties that were acquired through code compliance, and that's all that's there. And there's also a collection component for chronic nuisance that we've taken back in-house. Our private vendor did not do a very good job on that. So code compliance is in a whole separate section. It has a revenue right at about $1 million. And it's in my general fund section versus the code remediation fund.
And I want to just say one thing about that. I want to say this about that. One of the things that you mentioned is foreclosures. And I have actually requested that we get a list of the properties in the city that have been authorized to foreclose. I don't think we've been aggressive enough with foreclosures, and there's a couple that I'm working with the department right now about that. There are, the properties that have been boarded up for years, nobody cares. There's $200,000 worth of fines on it. Even if the city doesn't get it, even if there's a mortgage, let somebody get it that's going to do something with it. I'm sick of letting us just sit with these make-believe fines. With, and it's really not rocket science to foreclose a property. So my personal feeling is that we need to get more active and more more active with our foreclosures.
What we did too a couple of years ago was we put in place in the Code of Ordinances the ability to transfer our foreclosure rights to the CRA.
Right.
And they've been actually fairly successful in tackling some of our foreclosures. So we have probably 600 properties that have been authorized for foreclosure.
And I want to look at that list. Yeah.
It's a lot.
And I know because I've been dealing with Ms. Oliva about foreclosures. I talk a lot about foreclosures. And if it's in a CRA district, the CRA, as you know, will pay the price of the attorney, the legal fees for the foreclosure. And there's 2 or 3 properties right now that I'm actively pursuing because they've been a blight on the neighborhood and people need to have a decent neighbor to live next to. Mr. Diaz.
And outside of the CRA district, I would imagine the limitation is how much we put budgeted on our side to go do those foreclosures. So the policy is there, the code is there. I think you're right, it's not rocket science. So I've gone through most of the budget. Maybe I just trust you so much, William, that I haven't gone too much detail on your department yet, but if we need but if we need funding to do that and to have a foreclosure, more fun.
It's so static. It just sits there. And
I think last time I checked, we had like 25,000 or something. The minimal.
Part of the challenge is having a staff position, which we don't have, dedicated to monitoring all of them and seeing where they are, following up on the title searches, collaborating with the attorney's office. We don't have that position. And code compliance has not been fully staffed, even with our compliance officers, in about 4 years. And unfortunately, even in today's market, we're struggling to fill our positions.
Yeah, especially code compliance, not exactly, you're not going to be well reviewed on Google.
Well, I think part of we lost a person recently, I think, when they realized they were going to have to be outside last week working, and that just was not.
It's too hot.
Yes.
Oh, because when I in my previous life here, there was a little title company and I would give, they charged me, I don't know why that's an echo. They charged me X amount of dollars to do a title search. And once you get a title search, and that was like, it was a small X amount of dollars because they just do that. They know how to do it. We find, is there a big mortgage on this? And if there wasn't a big mortgage on it, it made perfect sense to go ahead. We demolished a lot of them. They're kind of a blight on the neighborhood. Maybe it's that.
It's off now.
Oh, okay. That's good. Thank you. That's much better. Yeah, I would like to see, because it just, if you've got some, especially when that's unoccupied, you've got something sitting there. It's a real insult to the neighbors that we are allowing people to just sit and let them collect fines. Ms. Mulligan.
My question is I see that this ordinance was passed in 2004. Do we still need this code remediation fund, or could it be merged with the other code fund to make it simple and easy?
Well, we track it separately because this is the one that involves the assessments that can be placed on the tax roll for chronic nuisance abatement services, their lot clearings, the board ups, and the demolitions. It was also where the city had placed its surplus properties in terms of the value of the property as an equity in the fund. And as those were sold, it provided revenue. I don't think it would be problematic to run it into the other one. It would still probably have all the same separate account lines and expense lines. And if you wanted to have a idea of what the remedial services were costing, it would be a little more difficult to run a report, but it's not impossible.
How long ago it passed and
Yeah, and because these are funds that we have to pay somebody to do the work.
it's an out service, yeah,
Yeah.
correct. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I'm looking for that list. I want to get some hungry young law school graduate who needs, I'm serious, needs a little income, flat fee. Here you go. Learn how to do it. It's not hard. Okay, thank you.
So moving on to the debt service. Debt service fund. This is a pretty much a wash. That's money that comes in. We have a separate millage rate that we charge to the residents. It's projected at 2.1 million for, this is based on the amortization schedule for the road bonds, 2017 and 2018. And
What is,
so-
yeah, what are the balances on those bonds? Can we get an update? Not now, on the next round, could we get an update on that,
Sure.
on each one of those?
No.
So we know where we are.
How many
projections?
there are? Well,
Yeah.
yeah, let me list would be helpful.
On all the bonds?
Yeah,
Okay.
please, and what their expiration dates,
Sure.
amortization schedule. Thank you.
Next. I'll go to the electric fund. We'll go to the electric fund. Might as well go to the graphs. The total projected revenues at 66.66 million. And the expenses are 69 million. This is where we have that deficit that we were just discussing of 2.5. And you have the revenues over time as well as the expenses over time, and you'll see that the revenue graph is much lower when you compare it to the expense graph. I will go to the water fund. It was a dream team. Water fund is pretty much in good shape. They are projecting a net income of approximately $500,000, revenues at 17.5 million, and expenses at 17 million. And then there you have the graphs over time. Charges for services being the largest revenues. With the expenses.
Wish we could sell our water, and I guess there's a legal reason we can't. Like
It's a good question.
in bottles, like sell water, like. They do, big people do. But if I'm gonna ask again, but there was some reason that cities can't do it. Yeah, like sell water in bottles, like the rest of the world and make some money.
It's because we don't have the lobbyists that Nestle does.
That. Commissioner Malega.
I do have a question on this chart, Yannick. If
Yes.
you look at the bottom where you have intergovernmental revenues, why did 2021 have nothing, and then 2023 we have nothing again? And we weren't budgeted for anything. Why is that number kind of all over the place? It went from 3 million in 19 to 96 million in 20, and then nothing in 21, but 22 had 500,000. And the numbers are all over the board.
Are these grants or what?
Intergovernmental revenues.
Yeah.
So this would be like Palm Springs, Green Acres, anybody who
Is that what that is?
That's what I'm saying, is that what that would mean?
I would have to dig in and see what happened in 2019. Not sure. Not
Yeah.
sure if there was a
Well,
grant.
even now at 2023, we have a negative that says dollar.
Should be
like,
zero.
So where'd that
Dollar.
$500,000 go?
That $500,000. What I'm thinking, water, sometimes some of those state revolving loans, some of those principles are forgiven. So for the state revolving, you spend the money and then they reimburse you, but they reimburse you in a form of a loan. Some of these agreements, they they forgive you for the principal.
But these are
That-
revenues, these aren't
Right.
expenses.
So once they give you that principal forgiveness, because you've already spent the money,
Right.
you don't have to pay back that money. So we have to record it as a revenue.
Okay, so
As a
this
credit.
isn't from all the other municipalities?
No, this is different. This is
Okay.
not, I think what you're referring to is the regional sewer.
Yeah,
Yes, this
So-
is the water for the
but we
water.
don't have anything for regional water as well?
No,
from-
we don't
From any
have,
of them?
no, we don't have.
What about the franchise fees? Would that be under permits and fees?
Where is the franchise? The front, that's an expense. That will be the next.
No, I'm talking about the franchise fees that we charge to other municipalities like Palm Springs and all those who get our water. Where would that be on the revenues?
I want to say.
Charges for
Either
services?
impact, no, not impact, because I want to say other income maybe. I would have to pull the detail, budget if you'd like.
Yeah, because just some of these numbers on this don't make sense. It's just not consistent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah, so I want to say those other revenues, the revenue that you're referring to, if would be listed in the service charge, which we have a separate item for them now. That adds up to off of that 7.2 million, it's about 170 million. The 17.2 million, 17.259. On the charge, on their charges for services.
That's the fiscal proposed fiscal 24.
Right. And then we have,
So that charges for services is total, like work residents, it's still all of us.
correct.
We don't break that down. We don't break those fees down separately, though.
Yeah, on the detail, on your detail budget, if you go
Okay.
to page 79, you have that broken down.
Okay.
Right, I'm gonna be a pain one more time, but on page 79.
Yes.
Again, if you go to halfway down the page where it says residential.
Right.
2310 residential,
Those
So-
capacity charges,
yeah, so for 2021, we had 231,000, and then in 2022, we jumped to 679. Where our actuals for right now are only 42,000, that makes no sense.
I would have to see what happened there. It's requirement of the more digging
Can you just
with.
look into that one for me?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving along.
Sorry.
It's okay.
All right, so. So for the water fund expenses. They're pretty much, the budgets are pretty much consistent with the previous year with a slight increase in 2024. For both mostly in the operating expenses, their contribution to the general fund increased. As we did some reallocation in the admin charges. The next one is the local sewer. Local sewer fund is pretty much breaking revenues and expenses are pretty much breaking even. With a total of 10.5 million for both revenues and expenses. As you can see also on the charts, they're pretty much consistent with a slight increase in the revenues and a slight decrease in the expenses. Next fund is the golf fund. We also breaking even with the total revenues of 1.6 million and total expenditures of 1.615 million. So a little net income there.
Does that include the rental income from the beach club or is it strictly golf?
This is strictly
Yes,
includes.
it includes the rental. Thank you.
So you have, and you see that the revenues over time and the expenses. Already. Right.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that, Mayor?
Sure.
When is that contract up for the lease, up for
So
renewal
this year, I'm looking at the lease already. Come on up, Ms. Bennett.
Because that number's surprisingly low for somebody who has a restaurant.
August of 2025.
2025.
2025.
Oh, so 2 years from now.
Yes.
I thought it was earlier than that.
Nope.
Okay,
Double check today.
thank you.
Because I have some issues with it as well.
I'm anticipating.
Thank you. Just looking at the golf fund from having been around this one for a long time. I remember many years where it came in negative, so pleased to see that holding its own.
Step in the right direction.
Yes.
We're our goal.
Why don't you come to the,
Sorry to make you.
Come
get
to
your
the-
Our
steps in there.
goal is to hit 2 million this year and we're awfully close. So crossing our fingers.
thank you.
All right, let's go to the next. Next one is the regional sewer. Well, we have the pictures of Brian Shields and Julie, that was, they covered this funds also. So the regional sewer, as you know, we partner with many different cities. Their revenues are pretty much the contribution increased and also it's proportionate to their costs, also the projected costs. Which for the most part, they will be using their fund balance because they collect the funds from different cities for future projects.
It looks like the expenses
Right.
are more than
It's slightly more, but we're going to be using fund balance to get that
And-
to get that in balance.
And these amounts both, well, I guess expenditures, this reflects the increase with the ECR,
Right. So they come up with their own budget. And based on that budget, that's what we have
Yeah.
to put in our side as well. Okay. The next fund is stormwater. Stormwater is revenues are slightly large, higher than the expenses, or revenues of $2 million and the expenses of 1.9 million. Roughly $100,000 in net income. The revenues over time, as you can see, those are pretty consistent with the previous years. And their expenses, however, have dropped over the years. And looking at the budget for 24 compared to 2023, their expenses are actually slightly lower.
And if I could ask about this one, this is a Jamie question? This is a Sam question.
Sam question.
Stamp.
All right. The reason I asked, I think Sam saw one of the emails about 18th Avenue South. It's on my list to do unrelated to 18th Avenue, but I mentioned the city manager today that I was out during one of the storms around 11 o'clock 2 nights ago. I have a bunch of video and photos for you of the area around F Street. It was that deep on the sidewalk. It was moving an impressive, our system was moving an impressive amount of water, but there was also water going into people's ground, into their ground floor, into the buildings. So I'll get with you about that one and see. I'm glad that it's a relatively low one, but as I was going around that area, there were a number of places. It's short term, but you couldn't get cars through, or it was risky to do it. So, I'll meet with you on that. See, and get you some exciting water video.
I'll get emails from people, the city doesn't clean out the, the grades for the stormwater. And my response to that, for better or for worse, is, the city doesn't have the manpower to come and clean out every stormwater drain. And maybe like every block could have a block captain to just make sure, because that's really, in my street itself, my trees contribute a lot to it. But, I try to go there and once in a while just clean it out, because otherwise it will back up. Mr. Diaz, especially when it rains.
That's that's certainly a critical thing. And it's like a day doesn't go by where I'm walking my dog and I see somebody with a leaf blower blowing stuff out into the street. That's such a colossal battle, but I think there's a lot of opportunity here. Similarly to what Vice Mayor pointed out, east of Federal, and there was a rainstorm a few weeks ago where it was a foot deep by the church, by Dr. Simon's office. And there's some challenges there, but also I think there's some opportunities. And similarly, I know, Sam, you're getting settled in. So sometime soon, I wanted to meet up with you just to discuss other things as well, like where we sell our water. But that was another top issue, is through Lake Worth Lagoon Initiative. The county is hugely supportive in supporting stormwater projects, especially things like baffle boxes. And I don't know if we have the space for baffle boxes in a lot of places. I know we're really tight on that, but I think there's some opportunities where, we can improve, and we're not going to get the money if we don't ask for it. And this is a critical thing that, as we all know, is something we're going to be dealing with more and more as the years come by. So,
We, on the, Madam Mayor, on the one of the leaves blocking up the storm drains, I've seen the same thing. I have a big push room, which I'll go out and clean the gutter once in a while. In theory, our street sweeping helps with that some. But I see the same thing, that leaf blowing. I don't know whether there's room for us in terms of policy to do something to discourage people. I've even thought about putting a Facebook thing. I blow the leaves back into my yard because I don't want to put them into the street, and I don't quite understand people who do blow the stuff into the street.
I have
It is
no
not
issue with the leaf blowers. I wouldn't want to say if I has to rake those things, but again, blowing it into the street,
Yeah.
really.
It's not-
We do that the city does that as well. I
yeah,
have-
valuable mulch material that is. And
Yeah.
certain trees are better options than others.
Bag it, and let the city pick it up.
Royal people love Royal Poinciana trees, but those things are like
Oh,
cement.
there's so mess. I have so many of them. My yard always looks terrible. It's natural. Okay, moving right along. The
Yes.
refuse fund.
Refuse funds / solid waste funds, revenues are slightly lower than the expenses. We have 6.7 million in revenues and 6.8 in the expenses, which leads to a deficit of approximately 100,000. And to resolve this issue, we're hoping to increase the fees, which have not been increased for so many years. And
Some years.
some years. So we discussed with Jamie and hoping to get a concession to have the increase in the rates, which would need to go, because we collect these fees for the residential portion. We collect it from the county, so it needs to be added to as part of the 9-month alarm to the county. So we have certain procedures that we need to follow. So part of it, the commission needs to provide the approval, the concession, and so that we can
Right.
get that.
Now, part of our expenditure, like tipping fees, what we pay the county to take our refuse.
Correct. So you have the Solid Waste Authority, which charges us tipping fees, which is everything that,
Jamie Brown.
I'm sorry, Jamie Brown, Public Works Director, interim, this is the city manager. Yeah, so this is basically for the entire operation. What he's talking about as far as the 5.5% increase is for residential only, which is on the non-ad valorem assessment. The commercial side of things we deal with as part of the fee schedule.
Okay.
So that'll be dealt with when we get to the fee schedule portion, I think on budget workshop number 2. So we haven't done this since 2018. We're talking pre-COVID. It's no shock. Everything has gone up since then. Everyone has kind of increased around us over the past years, and we've tried to keep everything the same as long as possible. But we're kind of at a point now, even our vehicles are substantially more that we're looking at now too. So wanted to keep it with that 5.5 was kind of like the max I was looking to do. And that's kind of based off of CPI as well. So we're kind of keeping in line with what everything else is doing right now.
Ms. Malega was first.
Does that include relooking at the manufacturer's homes conversation? Since they're residential, they will be affected as well?
Yes. So
That's all I wanted to
as
know.
part of the whole point in going through that exercise we went through before was we want to keep that at the exact same rate if they're receiving the same service. So yeah, that would match up with
I
that.
don't like exercising, just so you know, for the future.
Mr. Boyd.
If I remember right, the non-ad valorem one, the residential is. If I remember right, the non-ad valorem for residential is $290 a year. something like
It's 245 and 15 cents.
that? Okay, so 5% ballpark. is gonna be
5.5% on top of
another
that.
12, $13 to that.
Correct.
So it's per year. So it's,
Yeah, that's a non-ad valorem. That's a once a year on their taxes. So yeah, that's once a year.
I see the need for it, and it seems like a pretty modest.
How about 7%?
Thank
Honey, we gotta get it where we can get it. Okay.
7%. I was scared to go to 5.5.
I mean, we're talking about once a year. I mean, really, when you think about people ground because the cost of stamps is going up to 65 cents. I give you 65 cents and you take something to Alaska, I say thank you. Right? I mean, so I mean, over the year, I mean, 10, 12, 15, $20, really.
There's also reasoning there to encourage people to generate less garbage. So that might be a way.
Well,
to
there you
encourage
go. There's an ecological argument for it. 10%.
Wow.
I love your economics.
Wow.
I'm your numbers girl, I gotta tell you.
We want to really discourage people. Let's just go 50% across the board.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a once a year thing, really. It's not a lot of money. Okay.
No, and that will obviously help the slight deficit we have right now, but we're also continuing to increase our service and doing what we can to kind of make everything. Yes, sir.
The one thing that I'd request with the slight increase is, if possible, can we figure out as much as possible when we set the cans down that we do it with the lids closed? Especially with these rainstorms. I go around and close them if I happen to be walking by, but
We get those calls quite often.
Fairly regularly,
Sure.
A lot of times, if it's the one arm, the automated one arm,
it doesn't
it
always.
dumps
flip 'em.
and it sits them back down. So without someone actually jumping out and then flipping them closed, it's a lot easier if it's a rear load. If you're
You get on your one arm a little opposing thumb flipper to flip the lid shut.
I did not look into that device, but I'm sure it's not cheap.
I do have one more question.
Yeah.
So I am one of the culprits that call you often about dumping.
Yes.
That happens
About
when dumping, when people dump in empty lots.
Mm.
When you pick up, do we then contact the owner of that property and assess them a fine? How do we recoup those costs back?
Everything gets cited. So anytime you see illegal dumping, the owner of that property will exit with you see the orange spray paint on it. Photos are taken. We always have photo documentation, and then we actually take it because, as I mentioned before, the tipping fees, we pay for that.
That's what I'm asking.
So yeah, we always recoup that.
So would that be in charges to service? Where would we put that? It's not a fee. For when we have to pick up and extra dumping that we weren't planning for.
I believe, is that under charges for service, Yannick? Because that would be all of our citations.
And I have something to say about that.
Citations?
Yes.
Okay.
Because it's unfair.
What's that? Well, special collections when someone has to call if they have, if it's a different day, they're scheduling a pickup that's not a normal pickup day.
That's different.
So it'd be all these citations. It depends on what the citation is. They're all different
Because
costs.
I have a separate item for refuse for 95,000. That can be
Revenue?
revenues. So if it's not there, then I think it's fair to say that it's part of the charges for services.
I'll look into that line item and see where exactly that falls.
My problem with that is, and I've had this experience with clients, before. Somebody comes and dumps something on my yard.
Mhm.
I have nothing to do with it. I get cited. I get fined. That is not a warm feeling from the city. What? No, not.
Yes, we've got to start controlling it. We've got such bad dump areas in this city that it's usually the same culprits that come. And if the property owners are not being vigilant and they're not maintaining their properties, then, we've got to start doing
I
something.
dispute that.
I will gladly disagree with you respectfully.
Respectfully. Oh. Yeah, it's happened. It's happened to clients of mine where they have, it's like Alice's Restaurant. We found your name and address on an envelope on the bottom of the garbage pile and you're gonna pay for it. So that's something I would like to, if someone raises a dispute,
Mhm.
I would like us to pay attention to that because there are some bad actors that always do it, but it's landlords, people come from out of town.
Yeah.
But if
I found that because we're not the only city, this is kind of a typical way that
Yeah.
people assess. Like, so we're not unique. But a lot of times people, if they have a property where this typically happens, they take measures to make sure that it doesn't continue to happen. With cameras being so cheap nowadays, pretty much anywhere you go. Correct. Even people use things like trail cams, there's all kinds of things you can use that are pretty cheap these days. So if someone
you
comes on your
picture
property,
somebody and now you gotta find that person.
well, no, typically it's they're in a vehicle because if it's something they're dumping,
Yeah, we're
They
talking
didn't can-
furniture,
yeah,
The
like
problem is-
larger things.
The problem is that it keeps happening continuously, and then most of it is people who are just land banking, sitting on these empty lots in our city. They're
Yeah.
not contributing to the city, so if they gotta pay for their dumping, so be it.
I hear you, Madam Mayor, on, I suspect the number of cases where the person dumping is in fact the owner is probably vanishingly small. People don't dump on their own empty lots, but somehow somebody's got to pay. The city and all other taxpayers are paying the tipping fee and the pickup labor time and trucks and all that stuff to do it. So on that one, I tend to agree with Commissioner Malega that lean on the owner and the owner needs to up of their methodology for discouraging people from doing it, whether it's a nice picket fence or whatever it is, or trail cams. That's an
Mhm.
interesting use of trail cams.
Yeah, you'd be shocked what people do on
They
vacant
work
property.
fine for it.
They do.
And you might get the occasional.
How is a trail cam not gonna be stolen off an empty lot?
You
Just
can.
put it high enough.
They're camouflage, they blend right in.
They put a barn through, but at a lot of times we have a very vocal public, as you guys are very well aware. So a lot of times,
To some of my clients, that
Yeah.
they owned an empty lot, somebody else dumped on it because it was their empty lot. It wasn't even their empty, no, it wasn't their empty lot. They didn't own it. Somebody dumped and literally there was an envelope with their name on it in the pile.
Mm.
And it was, crazy. Anyway, Mr. Diaz.
I was going to say real quick that we do get a lot of calls
Yeah.
that come in, people just reporting other people.
Right,
Hey, this license plate
that's-
just dumped on this property,
that's good.
or the apartment across the street just dumped a huge pile over here if it's an eviction or something
Oh,
like
that's
that.
great.
So especially with vegetation that gets dumped all the time, and you look 2 houses down and all the fresh cuts are there. It's like we have ways of finding out a lot of times where it came from. So
Do we have in that case where it's not the landowner,
Mhm.
do we have a mechanism to go after, recover from? it?
absolutely, it shows up on the monthly bill, on the utility bill.
Or do you knock on the door and be like, hi, I'm Jamie?
Well, I had to call for a special pickup. I was cleaning out a house and it's gonna show up on my bill. And
Yeah.
The experience, I have to say, I called, they answered the phone, they came, it was great. It was a good experience. Unfortunately, one of my neighbors thought it was like the day now to put your stuff out and I'm like, put it back. You're gonna get a fine. Mr. Dan.
Not to belabor that now, but to make it more complicated, I'm sure our electric guys also pick up a lot of stuff because fences work when it's private property or somebody's property, but I feel like a lot of the dumping happens underneath our poles and in our alleys.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a huge
Mhm.
problem. And also our city manager has her light on.
Oh.
Thank you for sharing.
Oh, thank you. Did you lose your light, Madam
Yeah.
Mayor?
I want me to too.
Under her book.
It's under her book. Oh, thank you, Ms. Fisher.
Thank you. I didn't see it.
See a different perspective. You see different things when you have it.
That's
in
true.
perspective. It's
That's
a
so
lesson
true.
for us.
Thank you, Ms. Peggy.
Thanks, Mr. Brown.
Jamie, question
ma'am.
for you. So, in this proposed increase to the refuse fund, would that also help in achieving, your fleet maintenance and new fleet vehicles?
Oh, as far as our heavy equipment for, yes. So any additional revenue that comes into the fund, obviously, that's what we utilize to purchase, not just for salaries and everything else, but that also goes toward equipment as well.
Mhm.
So like everything else, equipment is,
Bless you.
it is not cheap.
No.
You'll see one of the capital improvement, project we're bringing forward, or one of the purchases is a roll-off vehicle, which is almost $400,000 now, which they didn't used to be. But we do our own emergency management in the city, and ours is on its last leg. So I lose sleep at night sometimes. If that vehicle goes out during storm season and we don't have another one.
Replace the one that ran into the bridge?
That was not, no, that was not replaced.
Okay, so we're down one. 'cause
We're down one.
Replace that one.
We were down one.
Was it, what was that? What was that truck?
That was a roll-off vehicle.
That ran into the bridge.
It was a roll-off vehicle.
Okay.
Yeah, hey, stuff happens.
So that's one of those very important vehicles we have in our fleet. Because as you guys know, when storms come, there's always that delay after the storm when our emergency management debris haulers can't get here. But the streets are still blocked, and SWA dumps aren't open yet either.
Hmm.
But we need to operate in that time frame.
Street.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Yep, you got it.
Thank you, Jimmy. So with that increase, the net result will be an increase of like 100,000 instead of a deficit of 100,000. So, and you will see that increase in the July 18th meeting. And the concept, the proposed increase for the rate, July 18th, yes. So the next fund is the internal IT information IT internal service fund. So the revenues almost break even with the expenses at 2.8 million. The revenues are obviously contributions from all the departments across the board. This is for the costs of the IT operations for the whole city, including wages and benefits. And you will see it, expenses for IT has increased compared to last year.
When we talk about, I think you call them chargeback expenses, that this would be a component of that presumably. That
Yes.
when we charge different departments, and I don't know whether it's chargeback or administrative fees, but one of those two, or maybe something else. Part of that is what goes to support the IT support to those departments.
Yes and yes and no. So
Okay.
we do have on the general fund, there's a portion for IT that we pay, that the general fund pays to the IT to the IT department. But this department pretty much serves the whole city. So each department, all the funds have to contribute based on the laptops that we have, the server, including the commission, etc., software, everything. That's the way. Yes.
And where are we on, I know it starts with an E and it's 3 letters long. ERP.
The ERP system.
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's a long story.
Do I want to hear that story or?
Well, Well. The
No.
only,
No,
Is there a question about?
Well, I know that I've heard for years that we have difficulty with the ERP, that it makes it harder to do certain things, talked about switching and getting a different one. So I was just curious where that is in the, and I don't have any opinion one way or knowledge one way or the other. Should we, shouldn't we?
Sure, I can
don't know.
share our thoughts about it. So as you know, last year, we were able to get your approval to include a new ERCP system, the expense for that in our ARPA funds. But over the time, as we revisit that, we realized that we may not have utilized our current system to its fullest. And so right now we've created a training system to make sure that our staff, at least in the finance department, because an ERP system certainly is designed from the finance standpoint first, and then it builds out to your other departments, because the finance department is the heart of the system. And so what we decided to do is try to look into our existing, because of course we want to capitalize and be more productive in what we have, to see if it really is necessary to move to a new ERP system. And so we wanted to make sure we are utilizing it to the fullest. And so that's what we're doing now. So it may not be necessary. At some point, we will come with a final determination if we should move forward with a new ERP system or not. So our team in the finance department, as you know, is kind of enhancing its training system, as well as their processes for how we
we might be able
manage
to
our
avoid
finance.
that cost.
Pardon me?
We might be able to avoid that cost.
That cost,
That'd
exactly.
be great.
So that may be $4 million freed up in ARPA funds.
So,
That's a possibility.
so that's like having Microsoft three six
Mr.
five.
Diaz is.
Oh, sorry.
First.
Yeah, so my clarification question was, because the transfer that massive migration on the ERPU, I think we projected was like going to be 7 years or something.
Well,
So
not
we've
quite that long.
It was
about 3.
3. Okay, so we've officially put that off. Like, because we're not continuing looking at the transfer of ERP. It's completely off right now.
Not officially,
Okay.
because it's still on your schedule and approved with ARPA funds. But we're trying to determine if what we're doing through making sure the staff is well trained in Navaline, and also work with the other departments to see if this is a way to go. We're trying to come into a collective decision as far as whether we should move forward with it. So I don't know if Yannick had something to add to that.
but yes, and we also, we also considering other priorities that the city has.
Mhm.
Is it really a necessity to have an ERP system? Because finance doesn't directly work with the residents here as a when you compare it to customer service and electric, we don't really interact with any residents. So is it really a necessity at this? It would be nice to have a new ERP system, but when we look at the overall priorities of the city, I think we should, to Carmen's point, Nelly, we should revisit. I think we should look into how we could use it to its fullest potential before we make that decision. So
And the second part to my question was, we put ARPA funds, but also I think at least some of the departments were going to pay into it. So
yes,
I don't think I saw that budgeted. So that hasn't been done. We freed that up for now.
right.
Okay.
I think the other fund that was supposed to contribute to it was the building fund, which is in the CIP capital projects.
So upon becoming finance director, you have discovered that employees in your department have not been properly trained in using the system we currently have to its fullest potential. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Malega?
So thank you, Madam Mayor. We could make it to where you have more interaction with the residents. Would you guys like a hotline? I almost feel like you're kind of, there's an ask there. Just kidding, but it is, I was gonna reference it to Microsoft having 365 and you only know how to use either Excel or the Word doc, you don't know the full capacity of how to use the whole program.
Correct.
And I want to say thank you for taking that
Yes.
step and saying, you know, we can do better with training. We can use this and let's see if we can get it to the capacity and also get our staff to the capacity to make sure that we can use this and your concern for our residents not being able to have the direct benefit of it.
Right.
So thank you for that.
Well,
And we'll get you a hotline number.
Commissioner Malik, I can't bypass that without also giving Nellie that, where is she? She also, along with Yannick, determined that this is probably be the best return on our investment. We haven't fully used that investment.
Thank you, Nellie.
Thank you.
Okay, self-insurance fund, are we there?
Self-insurance funds. So this, we have a projected revenue of 4.5 and expenses of 4.4 million. But remember, I did mention earlier that that number is going to change to almost break even with the revenues. We received some estimates during the past 2 weeks.
Now, can I?
That was the 35% increase.
35%, that's part of the 35% increase.
So the expenditures are going up.
Yes,
Yeah.
expenditures are going.
Now, just so that self-insurance fund, are we part of any municipal group of insurance at this point? There was one years ago, and I don't know what happened in the meantime.
It's
Here comes our
my recent.
expert. Hi.
Hi, Lauren Slayton, Human Resources Director. We are self-insured for the most part in risk. Any of our policies go through Pidget, which is the preferred government insurance trust. There's only 2 insurance companies that really cover municipalities in Florida. It'd either be PGIT or it'd be the Florida League of Cities. And right now we're with PGIT.
Okay, yeah, I think it used to be the Florida League years ago.
Yeah, we go back and forth with whoever will cut us the best deals, but right now we're with Pidget.
Okay, thank you.
Kim, I do have a question.
Sure.
I noticed that on our revenues in 2020, we had a $3.2 million influx. This is insurance recovery and settlement.
Yes.
Is that accurate?
Yes, that's for Hurricane Irma. So we booked a receivable. I believe it was close to $3 million.
Okay.
And we projected that we'll collect those funds, but at the same time, we created an allowance of like 50% in case we don't get fully reimbursed for it.
So that's
Yes.
that's the FEMA money.
That's the FEMA.
But it has been received.
It
It
has,
says 2020. So I mean, this is
Right.
3 years ago, but
so it was received but withheld from us because as you know, we had that litigation from the ages ago.
so we still haven't physically received it yet.
No. we haven't received
Okay.
it. So what they do, they would hold the money in the, they basically hold it against the litigation that we had from years ago.
But they
But
pay
that
us
number has
interest on
come
it?
way down. That number has come way down from
Yes.
FEMA, yeah,
Yes.
like to less than 2 at this point.
And part of it is because of Hurricane Irma reimbursement, instead of paying us, they would hold the money. for us.
Mhm.
So we're paying off that.
Yes,
Okay.
So the message is save your receipts.
yes,
So the money, we had to show it as, my point was, is that we have to show it because we technically should have received it, but we didn't because of litigation.
correct.
Okay, thank
Yes.
you.
So you also see that the expense side of it also went up.
Yeah.
Yes,
And when you submit your request, make sure somebody doesn't put it in a drawer.
the next one is the garage fund. Pretty much breaks even. Revenues and expenses of approximately 1.2.
And the revenues are like charges to other departments for fixing their stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
For the cars and
Jamie's big trucks.
on the graphs, you see that big spike in 2022 is because we had, you had approved for the electric, water, and the refuse to contribute 1.5 million each for the fleet maintenance facility. It was a total of 6 million, 1.5 coming from the bond that we issued, and the remaining 4.5 coming from electric, water, and then refuse.
I think Mr. Diaz was first. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Mr. Diaz.
Yeah, I know we don't have major purchases other than roll off vehicle. There was a law, and this is kind of an open question. You know, you might not have the answer now, but there was a law recently that was passed that was in regards to municipalities acquiring EVs. Do you have details on it? It was a financial thing that limited our ability to work into the plan to purchase, to move towards EVs and other things. So you don't have to have the answer now.
Vehicles.
That's a question for a future meeting.
Yeah, exactly.
Ms. Belega.
Like a tax credit or?
No, I'd honestly, I'd have to look more into it. It was a policy that regarded, it was like a limitation on how we can plan fleet replacement, and it's specifically to move towards, you know, full electrified fleets. I'll try to get more details, but it's a future conversation.
We'll put a note down and do some research on it.
Make a note. Ms. Belega.
I thought I was remembering right that, didn't we get part of the penny sales tax too was attributed to that ask?
Yeah, which is, that was part of the non-ad valorem bond.
So you, from the penny sales tax money that was spent, then we,
Right, so the penny sales tax would help pay back the bond. But that bond was the new project 1.5 was for the fleet.
yeah, but the penny sales tax was tied into that,
As far as paying back the bond.
correct? Okay,
Yes.
so that's in combination with the other investments from
Correct.
the other funds, correct?
Correct, which is
Okay.
in total will be 6 million.
Okay, thank you. I thought so.
Comment, Ronaldo? Okay.
No, sorry, I was trying to bring up the law, but my computer decided to not cooperate tonight.
Bring that back. Or we're not all here. Employee benefits fund.
Employee benefit funds, this also, projected revenues are 5.6 million and the expenses are 5.1 million. It's projected to have a net income of approximately $500,000. And the revenues, as you can see, you see the decrease in revenues is not really and expenses, they're not really decreases. The way we're accounting for contributions as far as for pension and mainly pension benefits, they used to be accounted for as revenues within this fund, but in all reality, all those contributions are liabilities, meaning it's not our money, it's not the city's money. It's we record as employees' money that we are obligated to send it over to to send the funds over to the pension administrator. So for this year, we are recording it properly going forward, where it will come in as a liability as opposed to revenues. So the only revenues that you see in this fund is really for the health, since we're self-insured, and we pay the claims as they come.
Okay.
Cheap.
So that explains the drastic difference between the current number from May of 23 and what the adopted budget was,
Yes,
because you reallocated where the funding should be versus it's an expense, not a revenue.
correct. And
So that's the difference in that. That's almost $8 million, 7.5 million.
Mhm.
Okay, thank
So-
you.
All right, so that concludes the budget by funds. If you have any other questions, we can move on to the CIP.
Madam City Manager, how long is the workshop today? Was it time capped? I'm just asking for, because normally they're 2 hours.
Yeah. I'm not aware of the time cap. Certainly, if we go through the additional funds, let's see, I wouldn't see another half hour.
Pretty much. It's just
When he says, you want to do capital tonight?
capital project. We'll do it tonight. Or
We can do that in, you think, 30 minutes? For every department?
I mean, we just gonna go over
Go through the list.
the list and see if you have any questions or it's.
That's right.
Okay.
So from your binder, if you turn to, starts at page, it will be tab number 4. Starts at page 213. For the majority of these projects, they are unfunded. I will, as we go through these, I will point out the ones that are funded.
Are funded.
Yes. Yeah, it's only a few, maybe 2 or 3.
All right.
So starting with the general government, we have Bristol Lighting with 65,000. We had that is that's not funded. We also have the next one being with the community sustainability for the lobby area, the 750,000 that is funded with the fund balance from the building fund. Yes. We have 2 projects.
That's a lot of money.
For the cemetery, unfortunately not funded. Right? Not yet. We have recreation, the Osborne Community Center renovation that was funded by a grant, which I believe we received in March. For 306,961. And the other projects are currently not funded.
Southline playground equipment that was replaced, right?
Not yet.
Not yet.
And we'll move on to street maintenance. The roadway project is a discussion in sales tax to $1 million a year. That's funded. And the sidewalk, which I believe. Yes. We also have, which is also funded by a grant that we received this year, the 1.4 million. And then we have the building fund, which is the ERP system 1.2. If we move forward with this project, it will be funded using fund balance from the bill.
I thought we weren't doing the ERP.
Well, for the building fund, I'm not sure. For finance, I know for certain that we don't need. We don't need.
Right. I don't think, I think this is a contribution to the full ERP system
So we don't need
cost.
this.
So if we do not proceed, I don't believe that this would be necessary.
So we can take it off.
The street maintenance.
Here comes William.
The street maintenance fund, this 2.4, was that?
Again, it's William Waters. Again, some portion of it needs to stay because we're in our 3rd year in arrears with the state and on doing online bill pay. And there were some pretty significant enhancements that had to be done to Noveline or some way for us to be able to do that. Don't know the actual cost of it because the Yannick and his team are still working with the new bank, but we will need to do something in order to be able to do online bill pay. And I would like to stretch it across, have a system that would serve all the divisions of the department, not just building. So I don't know how much it will be. It won't be anywhere near, $1 million, but it's probably in the neighborhood of 100,000, 150.
Okay, but so 10%.
Yeah.
10 to 15%.
Thank you, William.
Thank you.
The next project is the beach fund for the lifeguard tower replacement. That's also not funded. And we have golf course projects, a total of 2.5 million. Also not funded.
None of them?
None of
Okay,
them.
that's serious. We have some serious issues up there. I did a tour with some ladies from the golf people.
Mm.
I mean, there's one point where the golf path is literally falling into a pond.
Wow.
You have to get off the path to not fall into the pond. Matt, look, I think our city manager has some.
No, I don't want.
Matt, I spoke with him. He said they're underway of making some fixes to that path. I'm looking for Miss Bennett.
Well, we have 4 million of freed up ARPA money now.
I have a place for that.
So we fixed a portion of it. We were able to scrounge up, Lauren Bennett, Director of Leisure Services, with scrounge up some funds to fix a portion of it, but there is still a ton of
huge.
cart path. I'm actually trying to work with Jamie's team to try to come up with a Band-Aid for that, but I currently don't have the funds for it. We wanted to just start bringing forth a realistic picture of the golf course and the stuff that needs to be addressed. And a lot of grants, they want your projects in your CIP. So sorry, we're not going to be shy anymore. We're going to start sending some CIPs so we can go after some grant money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really, there's some places that it's sad.
Yeah. It needs a lot of love.
And if you increase the love, we can increase the fees and we
Well,
can make
exactly.
more money. It's
Exactly.
return on
And the
investment.
demand.
Exactly.
So I appreciate Lauren bringing this to the CIP. Recently, I've met with Richard Pinsky, our lobbyist, in preparation for our next legislative session, because they're starting early this year. They're going to start in January. So before we finish this budget process, we need to certainly highlight items that we need to send to legislature.
Okay.
So in that conversation I had with him, we talked about some of the water projects that we can work on. We talk about resiliency, and we talked about the golf course. And haven't had a chance to talk to Lauren about this. So, but this certain lines up with that. And so what I've learned that if we're planning to make improvements to our golf course, especially regarding the flooding issues and so forth, and possibly raising the golf course landscaping so we can prevent flooding, we need to do an assessment of that property. And we understand that there are grants through the legislature that we can capture this year. So that is one of the items that we have on that list for the legislature. Yes.
Mr. Diaz.
If I may add to that, I think we're also working on trying to get a meeting with some people who are supportive because there are ways of getting money to improve our golf course, because I'm seriously concerned about our golf course, and this is coming from somebody who's not at all a golfer, because less than 2 miles away is a very significant PGA course that is going to be really popular. So we're going to have to be competitive. But I think there's a lot of overlap, if you will, opportunity with other projects, and I've talked with Pinsky about this in the past about the opportunity to turn our golf course into more of a natural thing, a link style course as it's called. And with that, essentially that's kind of an expansion of the Living Shoreline project of Snook Island.
Say make it a links course?
Yes, a links like it.
I
Yeah, and because that's like the European style, right? Like you don't need essentially the traditional US style, my understanding, you have your greens, and then you have the fairway, which for some reason we maintain as a big grass field. And then in places like Scotland where the game started, you have your greens, and then it looks like you're playing in like a state park or something in between. And so, but there's kind of a halfway in between part where, we have such a gem of a golf course being on Snook Islands, which is a beautiful and impressive project. And if we incorporate some of that into the course design, we can use that fill material to raise up the elevation and resolve some of that flooding. And in doing so, it's a Living Shoreline project. So, the county can help, and there's groups out there who have expressed interest in supporting us, like Sustainable Palm Beach County, West Palm Beach Fishing Club. So it's a lot of people involved, and we're trying to get this meeting together, but
Great, that's good news. I mean, when we took the tour, Carmen and I took the tour with the ladies, and this, as you go south, there's this one area that just floods every time, and they were like, just let it be a wetland, let it just be what it is. So, good, thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
My boy, I was gonna watch it on the video camera. He can get funny videos of people.
Anytime it rains.
the best word,
Sea grapes are getting really, the mangroves are getting really.
the best word I've heard it described, and I'll credit Ed Liberty to this, is that our course can get squishy. And I
Very
think that's
squishy.
the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
That's a term of art. Okay, thank you. That's,
right.
yeah.
The next projects with the garage fleet maintenance, the fleet maintenance facility, I believe the cost increased to. You would say? So we have 6 million funded, but we need 2.3 million.
Yeah, quick explanation on this one.
I'm curious.
I'm not.
A $6
So
million garage?
yeah, so
Is it Ferrari driven? Where are we going with this?
the estimates and everything we were going off of with the build was 2019 moving into 2020 pre-COVID. There was actually an article in the Post just a few months ago about how building costs have gone up about 39%. So in looking at the rates and everything, that 6 million obviously isn't going to work. So that's what you're saying right now, is that 2.3 we're asking for. in the CIP this year, so we can actually complete this project. I just got the construction plans back about 3 weeks ago.
How far away are we? Because if we approve this, I'm just concerned you're gonna come back next year and say, now we're short another 1.5 million.
Construction documents are done, and we actually have a meeting tomorrow with the Williams whole crew on the permitting and everything, how to
But we'll
move forward.
just lock
with
in
that.
our pricing.
No.
So we potentially could be having a conversation next year that we're still short.
Hopefully, it's going to be going down, would be the nice part.
Blowing
But
up.
Would agree.
no, this is just current, and we're gonna move forward with that and bring this forward because you guys all know the current status of the existing garage, and this new fleet facility is also going to contain the new EOC.
I was gonna say, that
Um,
includes the EOC, right?
Yeah, this will be the a Cat 5 building, which will be,
Which we call huddle in.
Didn't we apply for
Yeah.
grants for that funding for the EOC portion or
Have.
through with, yeah,
Yeah.
a lot.
we've gotten a lot?
No, we haven't got any. We've applied for many because it does have that EOC component. And for many of those, we actually broke that out. So it wasn't even part of the overall facility cost. We didn't go in for like the entire amount. It was only the portion of the construction which would pertain to the EOC itself. And even then,
Still didn't get anything.
Who do we apply to the state? Is that?
Maybe
the state turning us
legislation.
down?
state, county, we were on that LMS as well, which is county level. We had a lot of projects on that, which along with a lot of the stormwater projects that Julia put on. So we've definitely been out there looking
It
for
would be
sure.
helpful for us. We don't know what we apply for. What grants we apply for and whether they're granted or not. It would be helpful information because some people say we don't apply for enough grants, but then they hear that we're getting a grant. And we don't have a grant manager right now. But that would be helpful to know that because then we could call if we know that that's in process, we could call our state or our county guy and say, hey, listen, we've got this grant and do a little lobbying to try to get the
Correct.
money.
Yeah, I'm all about that.
Yeah.
I mean, even if we could put in,
We
this
can
is what
annoy
I asked
anybody.
with Richard Pinsky. I said, let's put 15 projects up.
Yeah.
If we get 3, great, but
Right.
I think we should go for the EOC portion, at least, we should be going to the county and the state.
Yeah.
For funding. I mean, we could even go to Congress.
Well, it sounds like we have.
Yeah, we've been trying, this has been going on for years,
Let's do it again.
Yeah.
for years.
We can
lobby.
nudge anybody.
But also a component that IT is going to have part of that facility as well. I know they're going to be relocating servers and everything. This is going to kind of be even though it's a fleet facility,
But
it's going to
an EOC
house
Center.
also EOC as well.
Need one of them.
Yeah, we have some older buildings in the city that luckily have been not too badly damaged through some of these storms we've had. But we definitely are lacking some modern Cat 5
Yeah.
facilities here. So
I used to have to report to the EOC during hurricanes years ago and you didn't feel really comfortable.
yeah, so unfortunately, this is one of those that obviously wanted to bring it forward, but I just wanted to make sure you guys understood the importance that this continues.
Yeah.
Where's
So,
Boynton and Riviera Beach getting all the
I
money
know,
that they're
right?
getting for their city buildings? I mean, they've been putting up buildings
Yeah.
left and right, those two cities.
Yeah.
Are they getting it from the federal government? Are they
Boynton
getting
did-
state funding?
Boynton did a deal, I believe, and this is not perfect analysis, but Boynton did a deal that they gave the developer that built the city hall a large swath of downtown property in exchange.
What about the police department they just built? I mean, they,
I think that's all,
that whole portion.
I think that was.
I'm like, these two cities, they're building left and right, brand new.
Well, look
I
at
mean,
this,
Riviera
look
Beach
at
just
the
did
marina,
it.
the marina.
And they just did a new firehouse,
Right.
brand new one, state of the art. So we just
Which
need to
we'll
find
put
out
in our
what
new
they're
city
doing
hall.
that we're not doing.
Keep in mind that their physical area is incredibly massive to drive. When you drive east-west through Boynton, it goes, all the way to 441. So
Well, we
They
we
have-
have a bigger tax base than we do. Oh, no, listen, that will always be
our
our blessing and our curse, is
Yep.
that we stay tiny because we can't go west, which is wonderful, but it keeps our tax base.
You can't go east either. Unless
Yeah.
fish-
We do-
unless
we
the
can't
officials
go
start
east.
paying us.
Can't go east. Okay, Mr. Chance, did you have a question?
Yeah, it would, the first thing is on the fleet bill that I said, never mind, because it was vetoed 3 days ago. It would have saved us a bunch of money. But it was vetoed anyway. So besides that, it's more than just a garage, it's EOC, and it also gets you out of your portable classroom office situation,
Mhm.
right? Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, that's just public works admin.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of one of those things. We can operate from anywhere.
Yeah.
So it's really not about us. It's more about getting out of that liability that we currently have.
Exactly. Yeah.
Being able to operate better for our fleet function and serve all of our other city departments. And obviously now having a Cat 5 facility we can operate out of for the EOC purposes. So it's a multi-functional thing, but the admin portion, I actually don't mind working on those trailers.
It's an improvement.
It's a massive improvement.
Yeah. I remember your old office. Bucket trucks, none of this is funded? Okay, thank you.
So we go to the next page, with enterprise funds, we have the electric funds, also none of those are funded. So the project of 320,000. And the water fund, they have project of approximately 5 million. Some of these, I believe, may be funded through grants that they're applying to the states. But as of now, we haven't identified any projects being funded.
So this is essentially our wish list. So if we
Pretty
had the
much.
money, this is what we would do.
It's our Santa Claus list.
Yeah.
What?
And in addition, Mayor, just as Lauren said, if it's on our CIP, it gives us the ability to seek grants.
Right.
When they see that it's been in our planning process.
Right. Mr. Diaz, did you have another question or just?
Yeah, can we get a little description on raw water wells? Is that like permit acquisition? Is that maintenance? Because there's a fairly significant increase, it looks like, forecasted for 2025, and then it goes back down for 2026.
Sam Hetty, Utility Director. Yes, that is correct. We're planning on drilling a couple more wells. Some of the wells that we have are becoming unusable, paralyzed, if you would, unusable. And so we do plan on drilling more wells. And so, yes.
But we don't have the money for it.
Pardon me?
But we don't have the funding.
It
for
could be most of the grant money that we were going to go after. And I'll have to check on the funding. You have to forgive me. I've only been looking
Come
at
on.
these numbers for a month. So I just found out where the cafeteria was the other
Yeah,
day. So
really. We don't have one.
we don't have one.
And these new wells, they're still under the same use permits.
That's correct.
Okay.
And we went in for a new water use permit the beginning of this year, the first of last year. And we have received a new water use permit with an allocation of more water. So
Wow.
if
Yeah.
things happen with some of the things other things we're talking about, that will come in handy.
Mhm.
Yes.
Ms. Malega.
Being the investment that we're putting into the water, I know you've only been here for 28 days, if that. Have you looked at our fee schedule to see if we need to possibly look at the increase of fees on the water side especially to our commercial or to our outside of the city limit users?
And yes, you have to forgive me. It's my understanding that there'll be a 3.5% increase on water this year along with sewer.
Okay,
Let me confirm that because I was having a conversation this afternoon about that, and Stantec is doing a rate study for us.
okay,
And so I'm going to rely on that rate study to really tell us, bring back to the commission on what we need to do.
perfect, thank you. So we can look at return on investment. Thank
Yes.
you.
Mr. McBoy.
And I did have one question. The franchise fee that we talked about earlier, I do believe it goes back to the general fund out of the utility and out of the sewer. So any franchise fee goes back to
It's separated, it's not part.
I don't see it as part of this, but I believe it's separated. So
Because I haven't seen anything on it,
For the,
franchise fee.
right?
I believe that's an expense
Ed?
item on the water fund expense.
But it goes to the GF
Goes, yes.
directly.
It goes to the GF. Yeah.
Yes.
It's not calculated as part of the 8% or 7.5%. It comes out separate.
It is the 8%.
It is the 8% of the revenues that we charge for the franchise.
So you just basically take the franchise fee as the 8% of the revenue.
8% of the revenue, yes.
Okay, so does that number always match up? The franchise fees always equal 8%?
In
It's,
most cases, yes.
I believe it's part of the rates. I think it's part of the
The fee schedule?
fee schedule and the,
No. Okay, maybe, are you referring to the rates, the water rates or the franchise?
Correct. So there's always,
two different-
there's a fund transfer
Right.
from enterprise funds into the GF,
Correct,
and that's 7.5 or 8%.
8%, right.
So does the franchise fees come in additionally, or
No.
is that the 8%?
That is,
It is the 8%.
So we're not getting both.
no, it's one and the same.
Yes, it's the same. It's just one fee. Not,
I think you might be mixing it up with the administrative charge.
I'm not mixing it up. So the franchise fee that he just said goes straight to the GF,
correct.
General.
right?
That's not, I don't think that's part of the schedule of fees. I don't think that's what he was referring to. The
Okay,
schedule,
we'll get together
what's-
and
what's
work this
schedule?
out, because I don't want to berate this, but I think that there might be some confusion on the
Yes.
general fund transfer of the proceeds
yes,
from water and sewer versus the franchise fee.
it's the same. Out of the transfers to the general fund.
It shouldn't be the
it
same, but
has
we'll talk
franchise
about,
Fees and admin.
we'll talk about it later.
We'll have a little meeting.
Yeah, we'll talk about it off.
I think the confusion might be scheduled fees, because that's not part of the schedule.
It's not.
You're saying scheduled fees.
I'm talking about the general fund transfer from the revenues that we have set
Right.
from every enterprise fund
Yes,
comes into the general fund.
yes,
This gentleman just said that the franchise fees come in additionally,
no,
in addition to that 8%.
it's the same. It's
So-
the same.
So the franchise fees are always 8%
They
for
always
water and
8%.
sewer.
Water and sewer, yes, 8%.
They've wandered around a little bit over the
Then
years.
is
but
it the same for electric utility?
For this year, electric utility, we try to lower it a little bit to 7.25.
But that 8% always matches their
It's a-
franchise fees?
It should always be 8%. We've always
Okay.
had, historically, it's always been 8%.
Okay, we will have a conversation with some of the directors.
Sure.
Thank you.
And on the, for Sam, on the raw water wells, are those wells tending to be the new ones proposed further west?
That's correct.
And is that because of saltwater intrusion showing up?
That is
showing
correct.
up?
Yes, the water quality we found further west up on the ridge, if you would. High quality, very, very good water. That's the water we're chasing after. The other water closer to the east has a saltwater intrusion, higher ammonia. So we're not chasing that water at all.
Yeah, I remember seeing the map from the water management district a number of years ago. And
The ridge is great.
follows the coastline down
Yeah.
and it gets to Lake Worth and bulges in quite a bit.
Yeah, but this ridge here gives you very high quality water. It's like a sand filter. So it's like your swimming pool or anything else.
These wells would be around A Street, B Street area or further west from that?
I-
That's where the ridge is.
I'm still learning my geography here, so you have to forgive me a little bit. So, yeah.
It also highlights, if we only had a time machine 30 years ago, we should have invested in a Purple Pipes program because it would have helped alleviate all of this.
That's correct.
But we didn't.
But getting the use permit is a big deal.
It's huge.
So that's a
Yeah.
huge deal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Moving on. For local sewer funds, we have about 1.7 million of projects, which I believe are also not funded. Or in the stormwater fund, we have 1.2 million. Also not funded. That's something.
Sam Hetty, Utility Director. Most of the sewer projects are we're chasing grants up for that as well. And the stormwater projects, we have a few of them that have been granted and we're chasing a few more. We actually met with Holtz Consulting and Engineering today. We were talking about the golf course. There's a FDEP came out with some grant money that's non-matchable. So we looked at some of the work that we may end up having to do at the golf course, expand the lakes, that kind of thing. We can add it as a part of the water quality project. Comes back in with a living shoreline, comes back in with expanding the golf course, maybe taking some of that fill material and taking it to the south. Maybe alleviate some of the flooding that may be happening down there on the south end. So we're working in tandem. It sounds like we're all trying to get to the same goal, trying to increase some storage and trying to alleviate flooding on that golf course. But we're using Holtz Consulting to help us get there. So
Are some of those applications going to the Lagoon Initiative? Do you know?
I don't know.
We'll have that conversation.
Yes, but I have quite a few grants that we're chasing, and I'm glad the mayor has asked for that. I would be more than glad to put together all the grants that we've either been approved for or have to have match, or the ones that we're actually putting together and going after. So I'll have something to you by the end of the week or so.
Well, and I
Great,
think
'cause-
too that, I'm sorry.
Because if you know, I know it's time critical and it's close, but at the end of July, Lagoon Initiative applications, it's Lake Worth Lagoon Initiative, and you apply, and so basically the county will use their lobbying assets, if you will, to go to
Right.
Tallahassee and help fund it. So if we can copy and paste some of those that submit those, I would highly encourage that, because I don't think we've gotten a whole lot of applications at the initiative. So,
Yeah.
you know, you're not going to get the money if you don't ask for it.
That's correct. Let me, and I'll check on that.
Yeah.
Like I said,
Thank you.
Julia showed me so much that we have been chasing after and things that we have been working on. And let me make sure that I've not mislabeled some of these initiatives that you're looking for. So
Thank you. Another question from Ms. Malega.
No, I just wanted to state that, two things, Commissioner Diaz, that initiative, I did send it to city manager about 6 weeks ago and said, what are we applying for? Because there's a ton of money in that initiative that we should be going after. But we've never written a letter, except for the Lois Frankel, I think, asked from the commission supporting these asks.
Right.
And I think that that might be something that's beneficial.
That's why I was going to ask
If
you
we can
before.
compose a letter from the dais, all of our signatures are on file with Sylvina, supporting these asks. I think it may carry some weight, because I don't know how many municipalities actually do that.
right.
Who do get involved with these grants. And if they see the commission and the mayor's signature saying, please help us fund this project, we need it for our residents, it may pull a little bit of weight. It may just give us a little edge that we need. So I'd be 100% in support of doing that.
Which begs the question, though, would we have to have it on a consent agenda to be, to approve this particular grant application?
Yeah, if we did,
Madam,
So
five
number
months or
one, we would
something.
know then what's happening.
Madam Mayor, well, depending on the grant, because some grants require a match. So certainly we don't want to commit to a financial obligation or a match
Well, the
without
ones
your
that-
knowledge. So certainly we will seek your approval prior to doing that. So it will be certainly action on the
I
commission
agree. I mean,
regarding
phone
those.
calls and letters and that kind of, I know myself, when I hear something of an issue, I hear it affects my thought process. Mr. McBoy?
In that line, I believe I was asked, I don't remember how it came about, but I did join a call a while back, something related with the county. And because I'm a water guy, also, they said it, I think it was something that Julie had initiated, their lagoon related one. And they said it was helpful. We got.
Always
so
helpful. Yeah,
Mhm.
but we just don't know what's being
We
asked.
have multiple expertise available on the commission in addition to this, hey, we support this, we like.
I personally was surprised at how much we've asked for and how much we've actually received over the years. And so, oh,
Yeah, a lot of time we really don't know it's interesting for us.
yes,
to know.
ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Diaz.
Yeah, I like that sentiment, and I think that was kind of one of the key things when I talked about the Waterways Board, is that's a key thing that if we have the right group that they could provide comment on, because I think it is really helpful. I do get a lot of feedback, especially county ERM folks. I've been working with them to some capacity for a number of years, and they're pretty honest. I get really good reviews about Carmen and our team, and of all the municipalities in the county. We ask a lot of questions, let's put it that way. So we have a good dialogue with them.
So it's not just our citizens that ask a lot of questions, it's us too. It comes from the head down. That's how that works. Okay, moving right along. Where are we now?
We are with sanitation funds. We have the heavy
Yes.
truck replacement.
Is that funded now?
Currently, we have it as not funded.
He wants one a year, $500,000 every year for the next 8 years. What? How many trucks do you need, Jamie? I mean, these aren't Tonka trucks. $500,000 every year?
Typically, historically, we get 2 a year as part of our replacement schedule. A lot of times, like year before last, we didn't purchase any. We can take our current vehicles and kind of push those depending on the current maintenance load on those. like we're saying, this upcoming year, we're only looking at one, and that's a roll-off vehicle. So this amount would actually be more about 390 or so, close to 400,000. Next year, I think we're going to be able to put off not having any at all. But again, it kind of falls to maintenance and when we get to that point where we're putting tens of thousands of dollars into a vehicle, it's time to swap that out. So
That number every year, next 4 years.
yeah, it's typically we used to use the 250 per vehicle and to a year, and obviously it doesn't really fall.
So the truck that went under the bridge, we just haven't replaced it? I mean, do we not have insurance on it? What?
It wasn't replaced. We used to have 2 roll-off vehicles, and obviously we're down to the 1 roll-off right now.
That's why we have to buy one because that accident.
That is correct.
Weren't the parts weren't accessible, they were too much money or something.
Yeah, it was, yeah, it was not accessible.
COVID.
So. Yeah, it's been a rough go, fleet across the board, just getting access to vehicles and everything. It's been a rough go.
Okay.
So some of you'll see some different colored vehicles out there soon.
Different colored vehicles?
Yeah, we like some of the Traverses we had to buy, we had to go with gray, just because white's just you couldn't find white
We can
vehicles.
recommend white to match the fleet. It's pretty inexpensive. If you wanted to do that, just saying.
You know, someone.
I got people. I got people.
She's got people.
I got people. We can
Okay,
recommend.
regional sewer fund.
So, for the regional sewer funds, it's we have 425,000, and that also we have not funded. These projects are not funded as of today. So that concludes the CIP.
Wait, beach fund,
Each one.
Howard. Sorry.
Yeah, I brought it up.
We covered it.
You did?
Yep.
Yep. The lifeguard tower that we're not financing.
He said you were buying it.
Sorry, I missed the car. If I could make a plea for those, we.
Come on.
It's
So
a-
it's a month.
Let me
It's
ask you,
an
can I ask you a
employee
quick question,
safety
Yannick?
plan.
So
Sure.
what's really funded out of this is 2.487027, if my calculations are right.
So you added the 750, the one, and the
306 for the Osborne. The
1 million,
1.4 for ADA.
and also the 1 million.
Well, I put question marks because we still need to know
That's the
the ERP.
discretionary sales tax for the 1 million.
Yeah,
Yes, that's a discretionary
so
sales.
we're actually 3.4 million better.
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, I'm sorry. Our lifeguard towers are at max life capacity. We have band-aided and welded, and I cannot weld and band-aid anymore. And this is obviously a serious service where my team needs somewhere safe to work out of. So this is my help me, I'm poor moment.
It's
Yeah, it's three.
3 towers, not 1.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
it's
That's for
three.
all 3.
Yes.
They're also not properly grounded, right?
Yeah, Public Works is trying to help me with that solution as well.
Is there a wait list to purchase these right now? What is the supply look like?
I don't know. When I spoke to the manufacturer about 2 years ago, so I can reach back out because I don't know the current status of that.
Yeah, if you could bring that back too, I think that, and so do we know that this number is still a viable number?
Yes,
2 years
it's
ago?
very recent, but I will triple check with my team.
Okay.
But yes,
That is 3
For
units.
all 3.
yes.
That's a good number. I mean, that they're saving lives. I couldn't argue with that.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna use,
Mr. Okay.
yeah,
Mr. Diaz?
thank you. I'm just gonna use this opportunity to bring up the thing we previously talked about. If we free up the upstairs of the casino, I think, and if we have some ARPA funds available, I think we should seriously talk about not just the towers, but a space for ocean rescue to, have
That's
their.
part of the pool.
I know, and so where I'm going at is, as we wait for the pool, I think the designs that I've seen so far, the ocean rescue part, I guess, section could potentially be separated out and done earlier. It's a kind of an easier construction, so that we could free up that upstairs, make it available if we have that discussion. And to me, I look at it, it's a workers' rights thing. They need a comfortable place.
That's why I fought for
Maybe-
the trailer that's there.
Maybe because I'm a recovering surfer that, I have our ocean rescue highly regarded.
What does that mean, recovering surfer?
It means I don't have any free time anymore to go
Oh.
out there. Yeah.
Mr. McBoy?
On that one, I was involved many years ago in trying to encourage and find somebody for the second floor, especially the north end of the building. What I would ask, and I don't know whether this would go to Lauren or to the city manager, but between the two of you, I remember from many years ago, there were some issues with the building that made it hard to rent that space or hard to use it as a restaurant or some of the things. I don't remember the details. I think some of it related to access up to the second floor at the north end of the building, some of it related to kitchen, some of it might have related to dumpsters. I don't remember the details. Could somebody give us a little bit of a report? What would it take to get us moving on that?
I think an RFP, I think we're going to be talking about an RFP. Because
Well, the RFP is who would apply.
No, but just
But what are the current, what's our current level of knowledge of any obstacles to getting that going that we?
well, it needs a kitchen.
Hi, it's me. Sorry, it's so cold up here. As far as the building itself, I'm not aware of any issues.
Right.
The biggest issue for us was the operations that are working out of there and where to put that staff and storage. And we've had some conversations internally about that, and we're still struggling with the ballroom component as far as all of the necessities for what's needed. And yes, we do need to have a comprehensive conversation about somebody else running that ballroom because we can no longer do it as
That's
staff.
why I'm going to bring up.
Oh, William's gonna step up and run the ballroom.
Oh, dear.
I can make it really short, but there are some challenges putting a restaurant on the second floor. In order to facilitate the restaurant on the first floor, some of the access that was designed in the building for a kitchen on the second floor was taken. So there's not as much space in the ceiling to run ductwork and exhaust systems. In the discussions, and I hate to admit I've been here 13 years, but I have, some of the people that wanted to go there did not like the idea of having to go outside the space to use restrooms. We designed it that way. The city requested it to be designed that way so that they could be optimal, leasable space. But a lot of the restaurateurs that were looking at it a long time ago wanted restrooms within the space itself where they're air conditioned. They're a lot nicer than what could be otherwise. Beyond that, there's always been the complaint that the refuse is right behind it and it's difficult to get to. It's a trek, but that's the challenge of the beach itself is it's on a hill and everything's not optimally where you would like it to be.
I would like to add, just operationally, ideally, it would be in the best interest for someone to take over both spaces because to have a restaurant and then an event, it's going to be a direct conflict with elevators, storage staff, stairs, everything.
That's why I want to really reach out to the world and say, we've got this space. It's an amazing sunset, sunrise view. Why? Let's get something up there for both of them. I mean, there are so many challenges. There are challenges with, I mean, I remember when we had the first party up there, when we opened up in 2013 and all the ladies went to clean up and there was no hot water heater in the kitchen. We thought that was a shortcoming. Things like that. It's just things like that. So, but we've got to get something up there. It's been 10 years now. And nothing's happened.
This is bringing out the troops here.
Well, I guess, so as part of the next workshop, do you want us to bring something forward to have this conversation?
I would like to have this conversation. I mean, I want to get going. I feel like we're talking about stuff we don't do.
Maybe not budget because it's something,
No.
yeah.
Not budget.
But as part of the pool conversation, we can separate it and say,
Yes.
let's look at just getting this part fixed now. What are our options?
And at the same time, the pool.
Right.
Oh,
I don't think that they need to be, and I know that there's, there might be, this is kind of off discussion thing here, but there might be some thinking, well, we should do it all, the pool and the second floor and the whole casino thing. But to me, that sounds like we would just get mired in
Yeah,
stuff.
I
right?
agree.
Okay, so
Separate
we're
it
gonna
out.
keep it,
Yeah.
perfect, thank you.
I agree.
Separate it out.
A
And
little-
one thing I would say, though, again, going back to long ago perspective, that William will certainly remember this, that because he may remember that I asked him for a sprung wooden floor and he said, I can't get you quite that, but I'll get you a pretty decent wooden floor. That space was at one time intended, the ballroom space, as a very much of a community center, which it used to be in the old building that preceded that one. So I would have some degree, I feel like ever since that new building was built, the ballroom has been underutilized as a community center. It's been used much more for other things, weddings and whatnot, and some meetings, but underutilized as a place to pull people together. So I would want, as we move forward, that we're very conscious that if you want to do it as a joint deal, that the ballroom comes with the north end of the building and we RFP that out, that we recognize we're giving up at that point, probably community activity in there.
No,
I've been around a long time.
It's oceanfront property.
Oh,
And
a
that
little bit
all-
longer than me.
Since 1967. And that it was weddings. Once a month, we'd have a dance for any employees. There was once a month, there was a dance. But it was not like a community gathering center for different groups. It never was. Never was.
I just wanted to say, as one of the staff members who's been here since almost the opening of the ballroom, we solely focus on trying to bring in revenue because the beach fund started off in the hole immediately. And I love community events, but they don't always pay the bills. So we focus on events
And
that
we do
did.
use it for, we use it a lot of staff events. We use it for, different.
But you guys, this is oceanfront prime property. We
right.
can't give this away.
Right.
I do have one quick question. Didn't we build showers? Didn't we build
Oh, God.
something up there for the lifeguards?
No?
Yeah, yes, we had
bathrooms now.
showers?
we had to add in a shower for the lifeguards once we moved
Second
them
floor?
upstairs. They have to have somewhere to wash off body fluids and blood and all kinds of
That's what
stuff
I'm
that they're
saying. So the
exposed
point
to.
was that we were talking about the bathrooms earlier. So there is plumbing and there is a rough
I
working.
mean,
house.
there's no room for the brides to get dressed. I mean, apparently we're supposed to be the wedding business. There's not a room for the brides to get ready. They have to go in the bathroom. It's not
Taking off my leisure hat and putting on a hospitality hat, the ballroom was not well thought out for events.
it was not.
You're absolutely correct. There is nowhere for the bride to get ready. There's nowhere for the bridal party to hang out.
Right.
Everything's exposed and outside. So the elements to your hair is just done from the second you get there. You get rained on up the stairs.
But we want everyone to book.
But it's beautiful.
It is. Broke.
I
We're
got
selling
married here,
ourselves.
so I could say that.
I love it. I love it. No, it's one of the, in Palm Beach County, it's one of the wedding venues that people talk about.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a top wedding venue. I mean, it's gorgeous, but as far as like event logistics go, it was not thought out at all.
So we need
As
somebody
far
that knows
as
how to
income,
sell
as far as income to the city, if I understood the earlier discussion,
It's not that
very
bad.
minor,
So
a couple $100,000.
the issue is, one, government should not be in the hospitality industry because you make all your money in food and beverage, and I
And we
don't
need
have
money
the
for the
means to
parking.
do that. You have to pay for parking. And then you have to have the staff.
Right.
So in order to put on multiple back-to-back events, I have to have the staff that can do a schedule to do that. And right now they're doing both special events and weddings.
cheerfully with smiles on their faces. I have to call him Mr. Diaz because he's been so patient.
Yeah. So far, yeah. My thoughts on that. The venue space, there's a lot to unpack now since I had my light on, but as a venue, I care mostly, and I know this is a workshop, so we're not necessarily giving direction, but I'm going to put out my thoughts here. And I care mostly about revenue opportunity on those spaces, and weddings are, not often. But a restaurant is 7 days a week. And those restaurants can also be wedding venues. Like my sister was recently married at Seasons 52, and that's a great venue that is also a restaurant. And I think to kind of shortcut the process, I think it is in a way part of the whole pool complex, but it shouldn't all be packaged together. I think we can separate that out, just like ocean rescue facilities. And I think we have an opportunity now. The iron is still somewhat hot, but during a recent issue, involving Benny's, we had a number of companies who reached out and were interested in investing. And maybe if we kind of fast track an RFP on who would be interested in, being a partner in setting those upstairs, the two sides, to make it whatever they might want to be. I think that would be best, and that would get us the faster avenue to getting some revenue in. It would free up staff time from handling that sort of thing. We do need to find space for the employees that are there. But then we wouldn't have to store, hundreds of chairs and tables.
Right.
So I
And I'm
think,
going to take that one step further. There's a thought that the entire casino building, downstairs and upstairs, would be well served for us to get a check from the tenant who then manages the property, the entire property. So that we get out of the property man, and it's a thought that some people have have put forward that let somebody just take over the whole building, collect the rents, pay us the rent. Keep the maintenance going, that sort of thing, so we get out of the landlord business. It's a thought. I'm not saying it's a good thought, it's just one thought. We
Madam
have to
Mayor,
look at all perspectives.
I'm sorry. Oh, I just wanted to have Jamie, he's been working on some options, anticipating spaces for the staff so that we can move forward and carrying out exactly what you're talking about, trying to find a vendor for the space.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so it would be a multi-step process to get to a point where we would want to, where we could actually have that space vacant and put out an RFP or whatever you guys want to do. So I was going to ask in your one-on-ones with Carmen, if you could maybe verbalize how you guys want us to bring that back to you and when, because we definitely need to have that conversation on what needs to happen as far as, and we've got some ideas as far as where to how to get that space vacant and where that staff and the actual storage and all that, how that would have to work. The cost to do that, because obviously there is a cost associated with how that's going to work. But yeah, we just need to know how to bring it, when to bring it, how you guys want to see it. And then we'll put something together.
Okay, sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Great.
Right.
Okay, thank you. That was a good conversation. Glad we had a chance to talk about that.
And the next item is just the conclusion of the budget. So
Is what?
we're pretty much done with the budget. That concludes the budget presentation today.
So we're done for tonight.
Yes, we are.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. This, I have to say also, the first year or two that we were here, the budget book was like this big and it was crazy. This is much more manageable and understandable for someone like myself, who is not an expert in finances. So thank you. Do I need a motion to adjourn?
You do not.
All right, good night, everyone.